got a clock running. Good connection. I'm not seeing any image. There we go. All right. I think we're streaming. Can you look real quick and see if I'm... Oh, I can do it here.
Sure.
Okay, I got one viewer showing. Got 0 viewers showing. That's because it's 1 o'clock and I said 2 o'clock. Okay, that's it. I got everything. Okay, technically the thing hasn't started yet, but I had so much trouble getting it set up last time that I wanted to make it plenty of time to work out bugs, and of course now it went right up. But I don't dare take it down for fear of having problems again. But if I start too early, everybody's going to be, you said 2 o'clock. Okay, the sound is low, all right? Because of all the reverb I'm playing with, we're experimenting at this point, folks, so you're now all officially test pilots. All right, let me move this here. All right, is that any better? Okay, still have some reverb. I'm not putting out anything.
Oh, you want me to check?
I just, oh, there it is. Now it's working. Okay. For some reason, the whole line went dead. Maybe I accidentally pulled on the cable a little bit. Let me just clip this right here where it can't get pulled on. Okay, let's start over. All right. Now let's start over again. Am I still reverbing? I must have accidentally tugged on the cable because I didn't realize I was getting nothing on the audio meter.
It sounds perfect.
Okay, everybody, that sounds good? It's a love and no reverb. Okay, real quick, check that's it. Got that turned down, got that in the middle, got the, okay. I got my settings, I got my distance. Very good. Not sure what the hiccup was. Got a couple of things lined up. I'm getting an early start, as I said, because I had so much difficulty last time. I didn't want to repeat that. Now it looks like I'm a little far ahead of the game. Well, we can just talk about stuff if you guys want to, but I don't. Hey, Stefan, Maurice. Oh, great. Everybody's, wow. Well, people keep signing on. We'll just kick off early. Like I say, 2 o'clock's really when I had this thing planned. I don't want to start leaving folks out. But we're going to be talking about decaling and painting a lot today. And I got a lot of great replies from you guys and some pretty cool stories that were sent to me. But since we got a while before the show begins, you got anything particular you want to talk about? And I can do some research while we're waiting for the regular show to start. I'm sitting here with pen and paper, just getting ready to scribble a few notes. Been having the worst luck with paint lately. Hey, Barry. Whoa. How is Kit and Car coming along? I didn't get a chance to work on it today. They're doing okay. The paint looks a lot better now, about the 5th coat on it, especially on, well, actually on both of them, but especially on Car. I gouged out the front of the bumper to make room for those little chin lights that he has, and I found some little lights that were left over from my from the Strombecker Glencoe lunar lander that I'm going to tuck in there, but it doesn't have the crisp edges it should. I thought about just go ahead and troweling over it again and using a decal on it, because when you look at the pictures, those lights, although you can see them, they really don't stand out that much. But I think I'm going to go ahead and, hey Frank, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it the try what I got in mind, and if that doesn't look good, then I can just cover it up and use a decal. It's really oh, Goliath, you mean the truck, that giant truck that the evil one, I had to brush up on my Knight Rider when I started working on that kit, and Goliath was a semi that apparently Michael is wearing somebody else's face, and the guy whose face he's wearing shows up, and of course the old Hollywood trick of just giving the evil one, like Mirror Spike, they give him a goatee and all of a sudden he's the evil bad guy. And I don't know of a kit of it, but I would imagine it wouldn't be too tough of a kit bash. Kind of like turning Knight Rider into the late edition I was talking about last night, where you can just kind of extend the components and stick some wings on it. Good morning, Steffi. I'm going to say this wrong. Steffico, who? Oh, gosh. Guys, I apologize if I butcher your names. Hey, Roy. Yeah, I got my alter ego up for now. Like I say, this thing doesn't really kick off for an hour. I started early to get things, and sure enough, now everything's working. I can do anything to get this right. The N3N has been trying to find out correct markings for Corpus Christi. Oh, yeah. Yeah, they didn't take a lot of photographs in those days. Side note, guys, the N3N, I actually did a short video on Navy nomenclature that I need to finish off. The N3N has the distinction of being one of the only airplanes ever manufactured by the U.S. Navy, or even for that matter by the U.S. government, not done by a contractor. The Navy actually built the airplanes themselves. It looks like a big Stearman, and of course, since the Navy only, I knew some guys that flew those things, and of course, 20s and 30s and 40s, people didn't take nearly as many pictures as they do today, so it can be a trick to find proper markings. Right up here at Moultrie, Georgia, just a couple hours, or an hour and a half from where I was raised, they had Spence Field. Well, they still have Spencer Airport, but it's where the MAL aircraft are made today, the short takeoff and landing aircraft. But it used to be an Air Force training base that had yellow AT-6s, and it just so happens that the Sterling kit, the balsa kit I built, had the markings for Spence Field, and there were some pretty good photographs of it. So, but that was also post-war, or during the war and after the war. So it's actually it's post-war because they had the red bar in the stripe in the insignia. But yeah, 20s and 30s, it can be, and even if you find a photograph, it's probably going to be black and white. So you're going to have to make best guess at the customers. And it was all aluminum. Okay, I didn't realize that. I know it's pretty popular, and I'm not entirely sure what gave the Navy the idea to manufacture their own training airplane, but they did, and apparently it was pretty well made too. The guys did a good job. But while we are sitting here, just running down the clock, I need to grab. Well, actually, I need to open up one or two items. Had some pretty interesting responses sent to me by folks who, some of them are pretty detailed. I thought they'd make an interesting thing to chat about since they posted them as comments. I don't think it's intended to be any kind of a big secret. Let me see. There's that one. Trying to, oh boy, you know, you run off and hide these things where you can't find them. Okay, smarty pants, where did you put them? And let's look in the D drive. Probably be there it is. Got it. Yeah, some pretty cool stuff. Some of you guys have been doing some really interesting stuff out there. Mark up in Montana has been working on these Edward biplanes, and that has been quite the little endeavor. I have someone else who has done something I'm going to talk about involving the National Aviation Hall of Fame, and got a pretty wild story from Charles. I actually got a picture for that. So hello Ray, hello Decum, birthday, whose birthday? Let me read the messages here. It was all aluminum. Yes, the Navy did actually build it themselves. It was, I think, called the Naval Air. In fact, I believe the proper name is Naval Aircraft Factory N3. N in the Navy means trainer. And N, okay. The Navy designation at the time went type of aircraft. Then if it was not the first aircraft that they had acquired from that company, it got a number. If it was the first aircraft, there was no number. And then there was another letter. So that would tell you who made it, because the Navy gave every manufacturer a designation. For example, the first Grumman fighter plane was simply called, the official Navy designation was the FF fighter, and F was the designation they gave to Grumman. So the first biplane Navy fighter that they bought from Grumman was simply the FF. Then when they modified it, it was the FF-1. When they made their second one, then it became the F2F, and then the F3F, and the Wildcat was the F4F. Well, N3N meant Naval Aircraft Factory, third aircraft acquired, excuse me, I meant trainer. No, Naval Aircraft Factory, no, the N was trainer. Naval Aircraft Factory, third model, trainer. In fact, okay, I keep getting this backwards. Trainer, third model, Naval Aircraft Factory, N3N. Then the Navy gave itself the N designation. SNJ, which the Air Force called the AT-6, S for Scout, N for Trainer, J for North American. That's why a B-25 Mitchell, which is a North American product in the Navy, is known as a PBJ, Patrol Bomber North American. Didn't have a number because it was the first patrol bomber they'd bought from North American. It was a pretty complex little system. In fact, since I mentioned that, let me just see if I can find the video I made it, and I'll run it for you real quick. It's just, let's see. That would be media source. Oh, where'd I hide that puppy? Okay. Let's see. Nope, not there. And I file this stuff so well, even I can't find it. I've got to improve my filing system. But the you can, when you look at the old Navy nomenclature, you can tell right away who made the aircraft, which version of the aircraft it is, and what the aircraft's intended mission was. And if it had two missions, like the SNJ, which is both a scout plane and a trainer, they would just slap more letters on it. Okay. It is going, I have to figure, of course I don't know where I put it. Okay. Well, clearly not there. But the, oh, there it is. There it is. Okay, I actually have two scrolls. Here we go. Okay, U, Chance Vaught, N, Naval Aircraft Factory, M, Martin, D, Douglas, C, Curtis, Curtis Wright, B, Boeing, Y for Consolidated, S for Sikorsky, Q for Fairchild, O for Lockheed, F for Grumman, T for Northrop, W for Waco, S for Stearman, A for Brewster, K for Fairchild, J, North American, B, Beechcraft, Bell's an L, P, Spartan, R, Radio Plane, that's drones, Schweitzer's the S, and there's the rest of them, H for Howard, Canadian Vickers, they bought some Canadian, V. Nash Kelvinator, there's the first name that pops in mind when you think of naval aircraft. Brunswick, Bud. Well, you don't realize how many companies there were back then making aircraft. This is for a video that I've gotten about halfway done. It's just one of those things I kind of lost focus on. And yes, some of the letters did get reused as companies would fold or whatever. And there's another one here. Let's see. Media. Okay, here we go. This is the type of aircraft, not the manufacturer. Trainer, scout, fighter, observation. A lot of them are pretty straightforward. Patrol. J was utility. R for transport. Scout bomber, scout. You see how they start mixing them up. And yes, they had glider bombs back then. So it could get a little confusing keeping straight the way the Navy nomenclatured its aircraft. But when you look at something like the old Corsair, oh, who doesn't love the smell of a new kid? I call it the styrene high, or the sty high. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, it is. But the good thing about it was it did tell a story. A lot of you guys probably know that there's the famous Corsair fighter plane of World War II. There were F-4Us and there were FG-1s. And of course, FGs were fighters. Goodyear, that was actually the second aircraft they bought from, they put a 1 on there for a reason. I think it was a second iteration of the airplane, but it got the 1 designation, but it was the first one made by Goodyear. And then, of course, you had the F4U, which tells you that it's a fighter, fourth version bought from Chance Vought. The FG1 is, I want to say, is it fighter ground attack? One Goodyear, I forget. I had that ironed out for a while. Now I'm forgetting off the top of my head. It does get confusing, but one of my favorites to use is the OS2U, which is the Kingfisher. OS for Observation Scout, 2, because it's the second one they bought from Vought, and of course U for Vought. And then you have your subtypes within. But you look at it, the problem is they're really easy to get confused because a lot of them are extremely similar. Like, I think it was a CMU, was the SOC3 or SO3C, and the biplane that was used earlier in the war, the Curtiss biplane, it was the SOC3. And those two airplanes, although both scout observation, were worlds apart. In fact, most people preferred the biplane. Yeah, I'm pretty sure, Chris, all of the paint fumes and glue fumes in that place would eat air freshener as an hors d'oeuvre. That's the way to freshen a room. Open a dozen kit model boxes and let the styrene breathe freely like a fine wine. Okay, now I'm confused. I got to run it again for my own edification. Okay, fighter, yeah. See if they got a G in there. You do a lot of research on this stuff, but you get away from it a while and it sort of slips away. There'll be a test afterwards now. I don't have paint on the walls. I used that white fiberboard stuff that you just staple up and it's all done. Okay, U is Chance Vought. Naval M. Martin, T. Douglas. I'm looking for G. Because I know Goodyear. Because sometimes it was, I don't know, sometimes it would switch this stuff around. Maybe it had an identical, by accident, somehow had an identical designation with another airplane. Come on, we know you're in there somewhere. Nash Kilvinator. These little projects on the side you tend to forget about. You forget how much stuff, because okay, M was General Motors. That's why the Wildcat, the FM2, was the General Motors made Wildcat. I think G was Goodyear. So FG1D is fighter, Goodyear, 1, and the D is the variant. So it's the fourth variant. Haha. Oh, of course. It's FG because it's the first fighter plane they had made by Goodyear, so there is no number. That's why it's FG and not like F2G. That was what was throwing me. Fighter, Goodyear, no number means it's in between those first two letters means it's the first aircraft they bought from them. For some reason, they didn't put a 1. They just left it blank. The assumption, that if there's no number there, it's blank. Then the 1D is the subtype. Fighter, Goodyear, the -1D model. Somebody once told me they thought the FG1D was made for the Marines. It didn't have folding wings, but I think it did. The one they made that was really different was that AU-16. It looks like a Corsair, but they modified it strictly for ground attack. So it had all this armor plate, didn't have an oxygen system, and apparently everybody said it flew like a pig, even though like a Corsair, it didn't perform like one. And, right, first fighter bought from Goodyear, correct. Yes, this is the pre-show. Decam, that's exactly what this is. This started off as nothing but a sound check. And when folks started signing on, so I have a couple of things to talk about, but I want to wait till 2 o'clock when the gang gets here because, otherwise they're going to feel like they're left out. So, I think all the Corsairs had folding wings. I don't think they made a version that didn't. I don't know about the AU-16, but that was A for attack, by the way. And technically, It was, and rightfully, it was not a Corsair. It was classified as a different airplane. It's built on the Corsair frame, but it was radically different enough that it did not, it should not be called a Corsair. And then the few things I've read from the guys who, well, we are public, but we're not. I haven't. I mean, we're live on the air, but I wasn't planning to kick things off for another half hour. So, yeah, that's right. Patrol Bomber Consolidated. And it was that's the funny thing about the PBY is that it's not the first flying boat or patrol aircraft, or even patrol boat that they had bought from from Consolidated. I don't think, but the others, some reason, had some different, like a PB designation or something. So the PBY was the first one to carry that designation. This is truly live TV, yes, with all of the trials and tribulations that come with it. And lizards are true or false? Well, I'm going to go with true based on my experience. You guys know I've been having a little trouble. Well, not trouble with the aeoles. I'm trying to save the aeoles, the little chameleon lizards here, because they're bug eaters. But, of course, I've got, Godzilla, who's running around in the Tarbus. I can't catch him. He's fast. He's smart. He's super lizard. And he made a 3-foot, I measured it, he made a 3-foot jump. I'm like, I think I know why the others are saving, are all starving to death, because I scooped them up and tossed them back out in the grass so they can go find some fresh bugs. But I think he's eating them all. And do you have the go-ahead for the 3 hours? We don't need no stinking go-ahead. And down here in Florida, believe it or not, there's a lot of reptiles we don't kill. We don't kill black snakes or white oak snakes or aeole lizards or skinks, because they eat up the bugs and the vermin and the rats and everything. And whole Kuna Matata, Great Circle of Life thing. And somewhere around here I have a picture. I'm actually here in the, I think it was here in the house. No, it was in the garage. I had my little radio control Godzilla. I was making some kind of corny movie or something, and an aeole crawled out in front of it, and I took a picture of it, like, real Godzilla, so, here's a stunt double to stand in. Hey, Alan, glad you made it. Anole, yes. I keep calling them aeole. It's anole. Yes, you're correct. And my whole life we called them chameleons. I only recently started calling them anoles when I looked them up, because I keep finding dead ones in the Tarbus that have just starved to death. And it's really a sad thing, because I guess they're doing a good job. There's no bugs left for them to eat, but they find all their ways in there and they can't find their way back out. maybe they've come to prey to the Godzilla models. It's their temple. Oh my God, there's a cartoon or something in there somewhere. I never told you guys about the time I got surrounded by iguanas in Cancun. But iguanas are technically harmless, but anything that big with claws you still want to treat with respect. And of course they're fruit eaters. But I was just walking down the little out at the Club Med. This is, 17 years ago. I was down at Club Med, and I'm walking back. I think I had a banana with me, and I guess they could smell that thing. But I'm walking the short distance back to my room from the big cafeteria, and Mexican Godzillas, yeah. And I'm walking, and all of a sudden I see like two of them in front of me, and I don't mean two of them in front of me like they're walking by me and they're standing at me face to face like, And the next, I figured, I'll just go around them, and I literally had about 8 of them make a complete circle around me, and so I realized I think they smelled the banana. So I peeled a piece of it off and gave it a toss so that would distract them. But they're smart. They didn't fall for that. After one of them that was closest to it got it, the rest held it. They held fast, stayed in position. And I was so I just started throwing it in all directions until the banana was gone. I was like, look, it was like something like out of, Day of the Triffids, they kind of let me quietly pass by them. Oh, what's that old song by Wall of Voodoo, Mexican radio, where he talks about here I am in Tijuana eating fried iguana. Hey, I got mugged by lizards. I don't know. You know, one person's I'd never eat that as another person's delicacy. Isn't there a scent that's unpleasant to anoles you could use? I don't know. They eat bugs for a living, so I'm not. Maybe the smell of a cat. Actually, outsmarted by a lizard. Yes, my lizard brain failed to kick in gear. There is something we did. It doesn't work with the anoles, but it does work. I had the Tarbis had, I think it was a raccoon living under it for a while, and that actually can be problematic because those little buggers are smart and they can be aggressive. Do we have gopher? Well, we have them in the state, but I don't have any in my yard that I'm aware of. But what we learned to do is take some of the cat honey's droppings and put them underneath the shed, and all of a sudden, no more rodentia. It's like marking territory. Once they smell cat poop, they won't get near it. So I have never had a problem with a rodent since then, or anything, mammalian. But the anoles are. And I welcome the anoles. I mean, I'm glad they're here, but and they give the cat something to play with when they get in the house. Oh man, that's Christmas for the cat when an anole makes its way in. And oh yeah, okay, my armadillo story. You guys are gonna love this. Years ago, God, we're going back 20 years. When I was on one of my diets and I was walking a couple of miles every day. I'm from a little town called Quincy, which is about 20 miles west of Tallahassee. And I used to hang out at the airport all the time. Raccoons are technically bears, right? Well, I know they're as ferocious as them. And raccoons are not protected down here. Certain armadillos are just armor-plated rat. People want you to kill those things. Well, anyway, because I was going all the way down this rural airport, a mile away from anything, a phone or anything else, and this is before the day of cell phones, actually maybe more than 20 years. But anyway, I used to strap my old 1911 on my belt just in case I came across some predatory wildlife or something. And for the 1911s, an old government 45 automatic. Anyway, because you're out in the country a ways from anything, you can't call for help. So, and it serves two functions. If you do come across something like a bobcat or something, you can scare it off. A couple of shots will scare it off. And plus, you can use it as a signal device to summon help. And God forbid you actually get attacked by something, you can shoot back. And anyway, so I'm way out on the far end of this grass runway off by myself. And there are gopher holes. And we had a grass runway. And freaking armadillos and gophers and stuff would mess it up. But anyway, hey, John Ashley. It's a Texas speed bump. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm walking along. And the biggest freaking armadillo I ever saw waddles up. Like, what, am I being mugged? And thing just, and you would think an armadillo would run away from a person. Hey, you know what? I carry a 45 for one simple reason. Back those days, they didn't make a 46. But possums in space. I love that. Anyway, and I figured, and the thing looked at me, and I'm like, well, he's nothing to worry about. He's an armadillo. And son of a gun stood up on his hind legs, and from tail to nose, from stem to stern, prop to empennage, I'm telling you, that bugger was 3 feet if he was an inch. And he's standing up his hind legs, got his claws out. I'm like, what have I got, Armazilla here? So I pull out, Mr. 1911 and take a bead on him. And I'm kind of like, I'm channeling my John Wayne from True Grit. I have a writ for a rat. And I'm like, you want a piece of me? And I don't know if it knew what a gun was or it just sensed I wasn't scared, but it curled down and wandered off. So I holstered my piece, finished my walk. And I guess only in America does that phrase make any sense. I holstered my piece and finished my walk. But anyway, I get back and I told the airport manager, and he goes, you didn't shoot it? And I didn't realize he wanted us to shoot the things. And, oh, man, I gave up a free meal. Well, it would have cost me 45 cents for the bullet. But, yeah, it's before the 50 revolvers. I think the 451 Casull was out, but I'm not going to carry that cannon. It's... Man, when ammo gets to be $1 around, that's how I lose interest. But armadillo screen test where I got to. The kaiju that I've been working on the side of my own creation, which I'm using Aquatic Life to make it, but it does have some armadillo-esque features in it. Armadillo would make the basis for a good kaiju. I guess there's probably one or two out there that share a little bit of that in them. But yeah, I actually, if you watch the I fired a 50 too much power, it is. There's a point where you just need to be using a rifle. If you watch on my channel, the little "What's This Channel About" video, you'll see, and I just happened to catch some video of this. There was a girl at Fort Lauderdale at the Markham Park Range, and a guy had it was a 451 or 50 Action Express. Now, what this is like the big Desert Eagle pistol with a 50 caliber barrel, and they make this ammo, and I think it was 50 AE, and it's a 50 caliber bullet, a 50 caliber case, but the rear end's neck down that you can use it in a I guess it's smaller, whatever the standard breech on the Desert Eagle is. It's 45 or whatever it is, but so but just by changing out the barrel and the magazine, you can shoot this ridiculously large ammunition. You see her fire, and she only fired the one shot. But, God bless her, she held on to it. But you check the recoil on that thing, you're like, what are you going to use that for? I mean, if you need that much power, or Mozilla, if you're going to use that much bloody firepower, man, you need a carbine. Hollywood, you guys are probably already aware, judging by what I'm reading in the comments section, most of you guys already know a fair amount about revolvers and handguns. And the Smith couldn't give away their Model 2944 Magnums until they made the Dirty Harry movie, and then everybody wanted one. And then, like they said, about 2 years after the Dirty Harry movies came out, you went from no one stocked the things because no one bought them. You could get one for a couple $100. Then Dirty Harry comes out, and Smith can't make enough of them, and there's a 6-month waiting period, and they're going for ridiculously high prices, but free market, right? But a lot of people would get them, and then about 2 years later, once the newness had worn off, it was real easy to pick up a 44 Magnum at a good price that had a box of ammo put through it, because people put 20, 30 rounds through it and go, okay, this is ouch. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I love a 29 or 629 or good 44 Magnum if you're going hunting, or but for, you got guys, Curve 44 Magnum in my glove box for personal defense on a 4-inch barrel. I'm like, why? That is like the most impractical solution. Well, in my humble opinion. Why would you carry that when you get a 1911? I mean, yeah, if you live in Alaska, absolutely. In fact, when I was in Alaska last time, we're driving between Seward and Anchorage, and you see people out kiteboarding and stuff, or not kiteboard, whatever. We're on skis with the parachutes, kite skiing, anyway, and they've all got rifles across their back. And what it is you get out in the rurals of Alaska, you don't get far away from the truck unless you got a rifle slung over your shoulder, or a 44 Magnum, because the wildlife there will eat you. If you, Ryan, I see you're a reloader. If you look at pictures in the Tarbis, you'll notice on the long bench I have, not the table, but on the other side, the long bench, you'll see these two pieces of wooden trim on each side, but the middle's missing. The middle piece of trim is missing because that's where I used to have my reloaders. But I just wound up with too many hobbies and too much stuff, and not enough room for some things. And for a while, ammo had gotten cheap, so I just said, you know what, it's just cheaper to buy it. And now that's not the case anymore. My God, reloads cost more than factory ammo used to now. It's gotten ridiculous. 9mm was going for, I think, 23 or 29 cents a round a year and a half ago, and now it's almost $1 a round. I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. Yeah. But Alaska is also still a frontier area. I mean, it really is the great frontier. I've been up there a couple of times. I absolutely love the place. Don't know if I could deal with living up there. My dad was there in the Air Force, but it's another world. It's kind of, if a little ironic, the place that's full of snowflakes has no snowflakes. No comment. By the way, just for you revolver fans out there, my collection is primarily older revolvers. I just like them. Carry a semi-auto for personal defense. I was actually going to drag a couple of them out today because one of the things I thought I'd talk about was one when you paint models of like soldiers or police officers or whatever, a lot of people don't paint the firearms correctly, and myself included. And I thought about today's show, I might drag a couple out, just show the different kinds of finishes, but I figure you guys already know all that. So a dollar round is getting pretty common for 9mm3, even for, oh God. Yeah, that just flabbergasts me. And, you know, I'm just thinking how many people are offering, oh, I'll give you that whole case for $80. I'm like, yeah, I'll get it later. You know, ooh, opportunity passed. Yeah, they should have given Clint Eastwood a royalty. But what I was going to tell you is you guys probably all remember, a lot of you probably remember the old cop show, Adam 12, and Pete Malloy, played by, you had Jim Reed and Pete Malloy that were played by Mark Milner and Kit McCord. Milner passed away a couple of years ago. He's in his 80s, and I didn't realize it, but the revolver that he carried for most of that show, not the first season, but the later seasons, was a 4-inch with custom grips that were made by LAPD gunsmith. Well, that was actually his personal revolver, and he kept it. And it went up after he passed. Adam 12. And when he passed, it went up for auction. I thought about putting a bid in on it, but it went for, I forget how much it went for, thousands of dollars. But I mean, somebody literally had the Milner's personal gun, and it was the one he used on screen for about 5 or 6 seasons. It was the 4-inch. I have what my brother and I call a Pete Malloy special, which is the original LAPD revolver they used the first 2 seasons is a 6-inch Smith & Wesson Model 14 with a, I think it has the partridge front sight on it, target trigger. It was really more of a target revolver. Heavy barrel 6-inch, sweetest 38 you'll ever shoot, and I can still drill holes with it. And I got one, and I really like it, and we nicknamed it Pete Malloy Special. But then around season 3, they chopped down when LAPD went to the clamshell, the pop-open holsters, and the 4 inches. And I found out that a lot of their, the Model 15 is a standard Smith & Wesson 4-inch with adjustable sights. And a lot of their revolvers that like Model 15s are actually cut down Model 14s. 38 police issue revolver. It's exactly LAPD standard. And LAPD, all units and one Adam 12. See the man. That show was so well made because of Webb's, attention to detail after doing Dragnet that for a year, and I think possibly still, but for years, some of the episodes were used as training videos. I'm sorry to hear that, DeCam. It's, but I always wanted a Model 15, and I got one, and it's just a Model 10 with adjustable sights, but I think it just has a more balanced, more attractive look. A lot of people have said that they want kids who are interested in law enforcement to watch some Adam 12. They said Pete Malloy is like the perfect police officer close to it, and that show, you probably couldn't make that show today, but that show back then was actually a top-rated show. And I think the thing a lot of people liked about it was kind of a look into the life. But when the show was in production, hey Douglas, when the show was in production, oh god, that thing with that. Are you talking about that big shootout where the guys had the converted full autos? And that was a nightmare. Head to toe body armor. You had some seriously bad hombres there. Oh, not that one? Okay. They had, even in the 70s, they had a couple of pretty big ones. They had the Newhall Massacre where the 4 highway patrolmen were killed, and they had the Lido Creek shootout. And that was a long chase. They shot down a police helicopter. Well, I say they shot it down. The guys had used, if I remember correctly, it was... do you guys remember the old pickup trucks and the kind that workmen had that had the big toolboxes mounted across the top of the, not down in the bed, but up on the sides of the truck? So and sometimes they had racks above them. Anyway, the Beretta 92 is a little big for me, but it's a good gun, but I just never warmed up to the feel of it. But anyway, they robbed a bank, made a getaway in this like pickup truck that had the big utility boxes on it. So when the police were shooting at them, it was essentially a poor man's armored car. And they were being followed by a police helicopter. And they shot the radiators and engines out of a couple of cruisers. And so they were, the police had to follow at a distance. So they sent a helicopter to watch them, and they started shooting at the helicopter. And they didn't really shoot it down. What they did was, I think they hit the electronics. I believe it was the radios, and it started smoking. The electronics started smoking, so the pilot just made a precautionary landing. I guess it would qualify as an emergency landing, but the irony is that they wind up going down this dirt road trying to run from the cops. They didn't know where they were going. They wound up going to a place called Lido or Slido Creek. I forget all the details, but it turned out that's where a lot of people went to go plinking and shooting. So they wind up with all these people out there target shooting, and one end and the cops on the other, and big manhunt. They wound up catching them. A utility bed truck. Okay, yeah, it looks like a heavy duty pickup truck. But on the top of the sides, they put these, or sometimes they might remove the sides and mount it, but usually on the top of the sides, they would put these really heavy steel utility boxes. So you had use of the bed, but you also had these places to put your tools that was up above the bed on the side of the truck. And they were real popular when I was a kid. You don't really see them much anymore. Well, Alfred, the 1911, believe it or not. Hey, John. Yeah, I decided to get a sound check going, and it kind of took on a life of its own, but we haven't actually started the broadcast yet. That's why I'm just leaving the icon up with the message, so this isn't technically the live stream yet. Real quick, and I'm sure a lot of you guys already know this, but there's a famous thing called the Chicago stockyard tests. And, anyway, we'll be kicking off in 13 minutes, and I'm going to have to take a real quick break. We can get some water before we go. In the turn of the last century, the American military, especially after the debacle in the Philippines, they were having some real issues with stopping power with their revolvers. And yeah, sorry, you're dealing with Captain Tangent for sure. But anyway, so for the first time in, to my knowledge, military history, and the caliber and performance of a service pistol was not a random accident based on what was being manufactured or what they thought they wanted. They actually ran a series of tests, including, believe it or not, cadaver tests. And this data is still used today, by the way. And they used a wide variety of calibers, and I think it was John Browning, but one of the gun companies came up with the idea of what we now call the 45 ACP. They knew the old 45 Colt pistols, the revolvers, had the kind of stopping power they wanted, but they didn't want a big cartridge like that. And you have to remember that the old cowboy cartridge was a black powder cartridge. Now that they had smokeless powders, you get the same power delivered out of a much shorter case. And through a series of stockyard tests where they were actually, no nice way to say it, cattle were up for slaughter, so they would use the pistols to shoot them and see if they could drop them with one shot. And a lot of other things. And they would do bullet penetration tests and all this other stuff on actual creatures. And I believe they did use some cadavers. And kind of like what that guy, I think was Paul Harrell, the guy that straps all the pork chops and oranges and all the fruit to make simulated stuff and run tests on them, simulated bodies. But anyway, they actually had what you might call they finally used the scientific process, and that's how they came up with the 45 ACP. John Browning came up with the 1900, then the 1901, the 1903, and he kept perfecting it until he finally came up with the 1911. And by the way, speaking of the Browning high power you mentioned, yes, it was. The 45 was John Moses Browning, and the high power was really the gun that Browning wanted the 45 ACP to be, because the high power came along later, it was improved. And you look at a high power and a 45 ACP, and the lineage is obvious, but that was what Browning had been looking for all along. That was kind of what he really wanted. And but the 1911 was they carried. They actually issued 1903s and earlier versions, but the mass-produced one was the 1911. And the Army was making them. But you have to remember, America had a very small Army in these days. I don't think we had maybe 100,000. We had like the 18th largest Army in the world at the turn of the century. We were a regional power at best. We weren't the powerhouse we were to become. And then World War I breaks out and changes everything. And one of the things that happened was that the Colt could not make enough 1911s for when the war broke out. Everybody wanted them. I mean, they were going 24/7. There's just no way. They were trying to contract other companies, but almost every other company in the world was geared up toward revolvers. And I mean, we're talking very different equipment. It's not the same expertise. So Smith & Wesson had their excellent New Century, which was the big 44 Special, the first of the large frame Smith & Wesson revolvers. They said, look, we can chamber this for 45 ACP, and that's why they came up with the little Pedersen half moon clips so that you could drop revolver automatic cartridges into revolvers, since automatic cartridges don't have an extended rim on them. And so that's when the famous 1917, which I have two of, came into being. And Smith and the Canadians wanted it in 455 Ely or Webley, Ely 455 Ely, and which was their standard cartridge. But so you had it was ironic. It was the Canadians that actually bought the first batch, I think, of 5,000 of the triple lock, what they call the triple locks, from the Smith & Wesson chamber for the British cartridge that the Canadians used. And it did a fantastic job. They absolutely loved it. But they had a couple of improvements they needed, like removing the shroud around the ejector because it was a collection point for mud. And they didn't need the super fancy finish and all the fine, furniture and stuff. They looked like this is a combat gun. So they stripped it down and made the 1917. And they got rid of the third lock, the crane lock, because it was just unnecessary. It turned out the gun was plenty strong. And then when the Americans saw how well it was working with the Canadians, said, yeah, we'll take 1 million of those, chamber them for 45 ACP. Colt got into the game and had made their big frame revolver. And you look at a Colt and a Smith & Wesson, except that the Colt cylinder turns the other way and it doesn't have the locking lug on the end of the ejector. They look very similar. Although I think the Smith & Wesson person has a nicer action. And they made thousands of these things. And this was all to supplement the shortage of 1911s, which is why they had to use the same ammo. And the 38s that they had been using, like they'd use in the Philippines, it turned out to be way too weak. But they were still set up to make 38s. So they made a ton of those, but those went to like rear area troops, military police, service troops, cooks, mechanics, people like that, tankers. The infantry and the guys up on the front were getting the 45s for the most part. Not always, but for the most part. Did you guys know that one of Hermann Goering's personal sidearms, and the one he surrendered when he was captured, was a Smith & Wesson 38? Apparently, it was quite the status symbol in Germany to have an American revolver. And the 45, of course, became legendary. They, as time went by, they said, "Look, we got a couple of qualms. We need some improvements on this thing." And that's when the 1911 A1 came out. And they shortened the trigger and extended the beaver tail safety and the grip safety, so where it covered more of your hand, quit pinching you, and enlarged the ejection port and a few other things. But yes, there are companies that make model kits of guns, sidearms, and in 1-to-1 scale. And gosh, I'm forgetting off the top of my head who it was because I covered this in one of my videos. One of the first ones was a Luger, and apparently, if you painted it up right, it really looked convincing. It made a beautiful wall hanger. And I want to say, was it Renwall or? Oh my gosh, I forget who it was now. But there's actually been several companies that have actually. Oh, Pyro, yes, Pyro made a whole bunch of firearms, in fact. And in fact, I can remember as a kid seeing them in the catalog and thinking that's strange. And yes, LS, thank you. The Automag, yes, now it's coming back. Yes. And they did flintlocks, and there was even a kit, I think, of a full size like Winchester rifle. And oh yeah, I always thought a firearm was a weird thing to make a full size kit out of, but I thought about it. Oh, wait a minute. Actually, that makes perfect sense because a lot of people like to hang guns on the wall, but you don't want to put a real gun up on the wall. And this would be the perfect way to make a display piece or something you could put on your, well, maybe not these days, but at least not in an office. But I had actually thought about, I'd considered earlier today bringing some of the guns out to show you guys the finishes on them, but I figured you guys probably already know what they look like. Just so, when you're model, like, if you're going to model something like carrying a Python, you want a glossy finish. If it's a military rifle, you want a matte finish. But to be honest, I had some some concerns about actually showing them on the YouTube for fear of, agitating the YouTube gods. Yeah, model gun. Oh, they are problematic today, Ellen. Absolutely. If I haven't even seen these on eBay for a while there, I thought I might get one. I didn't even find any on eBay. They're probably pretty rare. Well, guys, we're going to kick off the real thing here in 5 minutes. I am going to just grab some water real quick. I'll be back, and then we'll get started. And thanks for coming in early. I really appreciate that. I'll be right back with you.
Roger Ramjet here. Take a look at the Lotus Racer in action. It won at Indianapolis. And here's your own gas engine Lotus by AMF Wenmac. It has something new. Throttle speed control. Watch. Just rev it up. And look at her go. Lotus by Wenmac. The first car you can control from idling to a roaring full speed ahead with throttle speed control. And now, kids, let's take to the air. Hey, kids, see that gas engine airplane? It's the new Boeing P-26 by AMF Wenmac. See what he did? That's the new throttle speed control. He can fly it by himself. Just start it, pick up the lines, operate the throttle, and go. But the new throttle control is only on AMF Wenmac's Boeing P-26. See the P-26 and Lotus Racer wherever toys are sold. Tell them Roger Ramjet sent you. Roger Ramjet here with a great new toy from the Magic Triangle. Hovercraft by AMF Wenmac. Watch the hovercraft, powered by the famous Wenmac Thunderbolt engine. new automatic starter, easy to start and operate. It rises up on a pad of air and skims across the ground. No wheels of any kind. See it glide over lawns, over sidewalks, even over water. You can guide your new hovercraft with a tether or send it around in a circle so it comes right back to you. You'll be amazed at the way it goes around trees and other obstacles. It's the transportation of the future here today. Play with it almost anywhere. Get your new AMF Wenmac hovercraft wherever action toys and hobbies are sold. And remember, for fun, for super fun, Magic Triangle toys from AMF.
And hello, we are back. Can you hear me? Yeah, maybe. Never trust the computer. Well, good morning, everybody. All hail, Great Styrene River. Well, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, especially those who showed up early, which, like I say, this started off as a sound check and just kind of took on a life of its own. But have a handful of things to talk about. I did comb my hair today. I even bathed. Had to look purified. Hovercraft, man. I can remember all the time I spent with trying to get Cox 049 engines to run right. My God, you don't have any hearing protection. You could tell when it got so loud that your back teeth started to rattle, you pretty much had the needle valve set right. And I never flew one that actually had an adjustable throttle. All of my flew was just wide open all the way. Go ahead, Chris. Sink. Bloop, bloop, bloop. The thing I thought I would kick off with today, the Sprue Crew. Oh my God, I have to steal that. You too, Fishing with Bob. Separators of shapes. I had someone ask if I would bring this subject up. He's been collecting a lot of kits, old ones, 70s and 80s, and the decals have gone bad. And he's trying not to break the bank finding replacements. And he was like, can you please ask the glue troopers, for some advice? Let me actually read the email proper so that make sure I get exactly what he was asking for, because despite all the time we sent gabbing, I didn't actually oops, I hate it when you stumble on. Like, ooh, I have to read that now. Yes, let's read it live on the air. Let's see. Oh my gosh. I think I know how to find it. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Here's. I'm just going to read his email to you so you guys can chime in. He has many kits from the 70s, some older, some newer. Some of the kits, the decals look good, but they're yellowed. Some are cracking, but not yellowed. I believe there's been some discussion on your channel regarding the use of old decals, and I've seen a number of videos or blog posts online. The consensus seems to be that to use some sort of clear coat on the decals before you use them to secure the decal and prevent it from breaking up, which I've had a lot of trouble with, even with using clear coat and using the decal restore. And before you secure the decal to prevent it from breaking up, I remember doing. He goes on to some of the kits he's got. So I go online, I bought some new decals on eBay. They were listed as brand news. The listing conveniently didn't show that they had been dated from 2006. They were already 14 years old, but they looked good. So I cut out the decals I needed and went to work. The second they hit the water, they dissolved into microscopic pieces. I've actually seen that happen too. So I bought another sheet of decals for these aircraft that were microscale. I actually had that happen when I did the GB that TD sent me. Tom Daniel sent me. The decals looked fine, and I cut them out and individually put about 6 of them that were the white decals, like they were supposed to go on the cowling. And as soon as I touched them, they disintegrated. So I coated the rest with clear coat. And I was able to, although a couple of them cracked, I was able to reconstitute them and get them on the airplane. But I thought you guys should chime in on this, kind of crowdsource this thing. The liquid decal film that I work does help, but the thing you have to remember if you're using liquid decal film, now there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either just put the film over the decal itself, or you can paint the whole sheet. I tend to put a fairly reasonable coat over the whole sheet, but then trim the decal out because now it's one solid sheet. The only thing that stuff does, it works kind of like a bubble gum or chewing gum. It puts a surface over it, a film over it, to try and hold the decal together. And if the decal floats free and you can slide it right onto the model, it should work. But it's not strong. Once you start tugging on it, you will tear it open. So, yeah, reconstituting decals. One of the things a lot of people I've heard they do to get rid of the yellowing is they put them up outside in the sun for hours, and it helps bleach them out. But I've heard people say that even if you do that and reconstitute them and use them, the yellowing will come back pretty quickly. I have not actually done that. I have not had much success doing that. So a lot of folks actually make their own. I have a laser printer, which works a lot better. I used to make decals on inkjet, and I put the 2 or 3 coats over it, and you had one shot to apply that thing. If it did not go on right and you started moving, the ink came off of it. So, reconstituting decals is a trick. It's very inconsistent also. You'll get one company's decals that it'll work and another ones that it won't. One of the reasons for this is that they all use different subcontractors, and not all decal companies obviously use the same formulas or techniques. A lot of the older decals, the big complaint with them was how thick they were, and no matter how much solvent you used, you just couldn't really get them to adhere to the surface. If it was a smooth surface, it wasn't a problem. But the upside of the thick decals was they didn't break as easily, generally speaking. Nowadays, you get some of these micro thin decals that you almost don't need solvent on the things, but by golly, you've got to apply them carefully because they'll tear or wrinkle. And once you get them wrinkled, sometimes the only hope you got is put them back in the water and get them to separate. We all know how much fun that is. But yeah, I agree, Jeff. I've had pretty good luck with gloss coat, not 100%. Yeah, decals definitely, Alan. Decals definitely do not pass the test of time very well. The real hardcore guys who are super modelers, they'll frequently stencil and paint, and of course the paint will last a long time. But you have to remember something else, and I think somebody made a comment about this recently, or I read an article about it, but even the plastic breaks down over time. Styrene models, no one when they made these things thought they were still going to be on people's shelves in 50 years. I mean, they really pretty much made these things with the idea that it would be either, it'd go on a box, sit a year or two, get made, and probably spend a few years on a shelf before somebody destroyed it. The worst of the lot were the like the old Johan kits that were made of the acetate before they started using polystyrene, and the acetate kits in just a few years start getting what's called the Johan smile. The grills will start to buckle like that, and pretty horrifying looking. And there's no fixing it. I mean, it's a chemical reaction. These things are polymers, and the other problem you run into is that a lot of that's right. That's right. You're right, John. Plastics never stop curing. And I'll tell you, in the real aviation world, that's become a bit of a problem. Some of you guys probably already know this, but the home-built aircraft that are made out of the carbon fiber with the resin, they never stop hardening either. Now, if you keep the airplane in like a Very Easy or something like that, that's all carbon fiber, the composite kits. Now, and this includes a factory-made aircraft. If you keep it in a hangar, it's really not much of a problem. But they've had ones that have been left outdoors, and the sun is not kind to composites. and all the incredible things they can do, they do not last forever. Well, an extension of that is one of the problems that they're having right now at the landfills and everything is, you guys know all the greenies are into wind power, and I'm not knocking wind power or any of that stuff. It's not that, but those are largely composite blades, and they're outdoors all the time in the weather, and they only have a limited lifespan, and they have to be taken down. And now we've got landfills filled up with these old composite wind farm blades that are creating an actual, and the stuff's toxic, so there's a hazard. You can't just grind it up and bury it, and not to mention the fact that it's made of that stuff makes it really hard to cut them up too. I did not appreciate just how tough this stuff was till I had to cut a piece of it one time that had already cured. Like, holy crap! Get out the laser cutter, the laser. No calculatable lifespan. Yep, that doesn't shock me. But I'm assuming that the carbon fiber that they're using, first off, is probably of the highest caliber, mostly kept indoors, and it's in an airplane where it's getting the stresses of bouncing. Of course, it also depends on how many hours you fly it, but it's getting the stresses of being left out in the weather and then bounced around and flexing all the time. And these are stress-bearing members. But now, I've never heard of a carbon fiber airplane like having any kind of in-flight separation, but I've seen some. A guy'd have one for sale, and the mechanic goes out and looks at it. You need a mechanic who knows what they call the glass airplanes, and he gets out there and he can see where it started to fray in the corners. This thing's starting to peel, and you can trim it off and resin it back down. There are patches for it, but you have to understand that the whole thing's starting to harden, and the military started using a lot, and the airlines started using a lot of the carbon fiber in the manufacturing of modern aircraft. Some of them are largely like the 787, huge amounts of what they call composite. But the airplane they know is going to have a limited lifespan from here to here, and then it'll be retired. So it's well within that. Oh, really? Take shots in one direction? Oh, that makes sense, I suppose. But of course, the models are a really different animal. We talk about styrene versus carbon fiber, but and resins. But it's just like all of us seen fiberglass boats that have started to unravel. The fiberglass. We've all seen fiberglass. It's gotten old. Even wood will rot after a while. Metal will rust. I mean, there's really nothing lasts forever. I don't know about titanium, but it's not like we're going to be making planes. Well, actually, we do make planes out of that, parts of them. But you know what I mean. But if you build a kit and put it on the shelf and you've had it forever and it's something you built as a kid and you look at it now and it's starting to crack and the decals are falling off, you can either just leave it the way it is. Maybe you can try and put another clear coat on it to buy it sometime, or you can just strip it down and rebuild it. My tendency is to rehabilitate them. I've rehabilitated that Mosquito and the AT-AT that I have, which are my brother's kits, and the F-105G. They were getting in pretty rough shape from years of dust on them and everything, and I cleaned them up, and I just went ahead and touched up the paint and clear coated them and replaced some decals and made the spinny props for the Mossy. And they're actually still in pretty good shape, and those things are in 83, so they're 40 pushing 40 years old. Delaminating as hell. Yeah. But at my age, I am not worried about outliving my models. But the decals, I would say, well, sometimes the glue also. I've seen ones that the glue just over time, the glue bond just lets go, and you wind up with, struts and stuff hanging loose. But the problem is that the plastic deforms, and as plastic gets older, it's hard. You talk about, well, you can warm it up and straighten it back. Well, depending on a certain age, yeah, but after a certain point, that gets real tricky. And I'm not saying it can't be done. That gets to the follow-on point. I personally think the decals are the real weak point, followed by glue. I think the styrene itself is the last of your concerns. It's when it starts turning itself back into powder. Yeah, I can believe it, and it helps that they've been kept in the box and they haven't been exposed to the sun. So and I imagine you keep in a somewhat climate-controlled environment. And I don't think the cold hurts them as much as the heat does, but I could be wrong on that. Yeah, that's exactly it. Your Corsairs have brittle decals. Yeah, you get a kit from the 70s. I actually, on the 1/32 scale Wildcat and Messerschmitt and Spitfire, I actually did use the original decals. And because they were the old, heavy, thick ones, even though they were made in the late 60s, because they were those old, heavy, thick decals. Now, they did break, but they broke in one plot, and I was able to put them back together. And I'm using setting solution, and I might as well be putting it on a sheet of plastic. They hardly made those things settle. They laughed at my Tamiya setting solution and my Mark Fit and all that other stuff. So one of them, in fact, some of the battle damage on the Spitfire where the roundels got a bullet hole through it that took some of the paint off, that was because I could not get that piece of decal to lay down even with glue. I even tried putting a little thin glue on it, and it just, I was like, I am 1960s vintage thick-heighted decal, you know. I will do what I want. So I was like, fine, I whacked it off and put battle damage. Yay, battle damage. Battle damage, covering up for thumbprints, bad paint jobs, and bad decals for 70 years. Bulletproof decal. But none of them survived the X-Acto knife blade. By the way, speaking of the X-Acto knife, some of you guys had mentioned scalpels. I am going to go, at some point, get a scalpel and see how it stacks up to an X-Acto knife blade, because those of you who use scalpels are really so that they're substantially better than X-Acto knife with their longevity and everything. And so I'm going to give that a shot. I haven't had a scalpel since I was 14 in my biology class. I had to dissect the frog, and I mean those frogs were big. Yeah, there you go, man. Weather and battle damage, covering our boo-boos, you know, making modelers look good for 50 years. Oh yeah, lightning strike. I actually had, I've had several lightning strikes in the airplane, and when they leave the aluminum, which is normally their exit point, they just leave little pinholes, like somebody shook a pepper on the side of the airplane. But when you're right, if they go out fiberglass, which is normally not their path of travel, but if they do, yeah, you're gonna have frayed fiberglass. It's gonna make a mess. And there was one DC-8 I saw that took a hit of lightning, and it either entered or exited. I guess it exited through the fiberglass nose cone that covered the radar, and it blew that thing half off. I mean, it knocked a chunk out of it that big. So get a Bard Parker handle. Hold on, let me write that down. Bard Parker handle for scalpel. Do a lot of race cars, so decals became crash damage. Oh, and that segues into the anyway, I hope that Rich, I hope that addresses the issue you were asking about. That gets to the next thing, which was the paint on the Chevy fleet side pickup I was doing. And a couple of guys, one thing I've noticed is every person had who commented on this had a different experience and a different way to handle it. And it's really great because you're crowdsourcing, you get all these great ideas. But I thought I was going to get laughed at for being the only guy that didn't take time to prime his models. And it turns out most of you guys were like, no, we don't prime those things, you know. So I did wash them with just a little bit of Dawn dishwater in a bucket of water and toothbrushed them, and then rinsed them. Now, I gave them a quick rinse and let them dry. And I thought maybe I'd left a little soap on, because when I spray painted with this brand new can of, I think it's number 15 blue Tamiya acrylic, the coating looked perfect, and I did not have my hand on it. It was on the new stand I got. And I'm spinning it around. It looks good. Light coat, fine. And I just did a gradual build up, and it really looked good. And then I come back about 10 minutes later, I look, and 99% of it looks good, but in one or two spots, the paint's just not there. It's just like it flowed away. And I don't know if it was the weight of the paint. Maybe I put it on a little too heavy and just grabbed before it could harden. But I was like, you know, acrylic dries pretty quick. Some of it would adhere. This is pretty much naked plastic I'm looking at. And it could be a characteristic of that paint but then I did the same thing on the frame using the airbrush instead of a rattle can, and I got the exact same problem, and I did not wash the frame because it's the frame. It's going to paint it black. Both of them were acrylics. One was a Tamiya and one was Model Master. And I was thinking it could be something to do with the plastic that the Revell makes that truck out of, because these things are popped in China, I believe. So the plastic felt a little different. See, it could be something to do with the actual plastic they're using. Maybe it's so smooth or something, but I'm sure if I gave it a shot. Now, a lot of you guys had great ideas on what to do, and some of you guys also had some really interesting ways to strip paint, different ways you prep your models. I learned no two people are the same either. Everybody had their own way of doing things, and apparently it works for you. But a lot of people had the same or similar experience to what I've had, or other odd experiences. So something I thought in my little lizard brain up here was, I don't know how this worked, but what if, now a lot of times obviously people are just going to use primer. Okay, makes sense. But what if you just, and I don't know if there's, you tell me what you think, if you just shot it with clear coat before you put any paint on it, and put a clear coat base on it, and then put the paint on top, when that hardened, put the paint on top of that. And the clear coat could work as, a sealer or something to make sure that the paint has something to adhere to, that it's designed to adhere to. Paul, I have never used Mr. Surfacer, and I really should. I need to get some, because the people I know who use it swear by it. And I understand they make a lot of different products for different kinds of surfaces. Light part plastic, yeah. To me, okay. I guess what I'm talking about is just priming it in clear coat. For example, let's say you have a white model and you're going to use a white paint. If you were to shoot it with clear coat, so you don't alter the color, then, whereas if you put a gray primer, now you've got to get enough paint. I'm just thinking out loud. I'm just spitballing here. I don't know if there would be any real advantage to doing that or not. I worry about the China model kits. I don't see the sign. Yeah. They can have, you can give a company the best molds, but the quality of the plastics also is a big an issue. And that early Trumpeter FT5 that my brother and I were talking about, it was made of some weird, I've had some weird plastic come out of China. Light sanding of a car body helps immensely. Use wet dry sandpaper to give the paint some. Yeah, one of the things I thought about was, I think that truck, because the surfaces were unbelievably smooth, and that's something I considered, is that maybe it just wasn't something for the paint to hold on to. It flowed too easily. 50 coats of paint. Model come true. Yeah, I need to start using it. I need to learn how to use Mr. Surfacer and start using it, because I've seen some people do some impressive stuff with it. Yeah, prep, yeah. One of the guys I was watching online, I forget who it is, and he always uses exclusively the big cans of 2X to prime the model and to paint it. And he really, he washed them first, but he was like, look guys, it works, and the couple of times I've used that 2X, I have to admit, it left a pretty decent finish. I know that some people consider that a heresy in model building, but my attitude is whatever works. The very first model I ever got in Fine Scale Modeler on their website was my Mercury capsule, the big Atomic City kit. I shot the capsule with Krylon, because as big as that model was, there was no way I was going to airbrush that thing. I didn't have the big Iwata back then. And it turned out great. I was very happy with it. And now the heat shield and the tower were done with model paints, but the actual big black body of the capsule was done with Krylon, and partly because of the big scale of the kit probably helped too, but not a problem. And I'm reading a couple of notes here. Learn the hard way. Always use primer. Just build leveling thinner. Yeah. Now I was using X20. I did. No. The rattle can came straight out of the can, obviously, because it was can. When I painted Kit and Car again, put another coat on them. I I did kit with the rattle can, and after about 5 coats, it finally kind of evened out. Some of the orange peel went away. And actually, you can still see some of the file marks and stuff where I'd sanded on it. And, but it's okay. Car using the airbrush with the X28 thinner came out okay too. So they're finally starting to look more like models now. So I'm giving, well, I'm probably not going to have time to work on them. So by the time I come back from this next trip, they'll be all nice and done. I can finish the assembly on them. Pretty much, they're mostly done. Just got to attach car to the body, put the last few parts on them, and which have already been pre-painted, and then put the windows in them, and then start working on a little diorama, and then take that immense miniatures from Mark Tyler figure and turn it into the Hoff. I just got to make sure I have enough putty to make the Hoff hair. I was going to use the Jim Hunt. I think it was the Jim Hunt. I think he's the one that had all the long hair. Because I figured, oh, heck, you can just file that down a little bit, paint. But then I realized he was a different scale because he towered over those cars. You know, the 124 and 125 scale, you think, 124, 125. But you can tell the difference. It's surprising how much that little 1% makes. That Polaris substantially larger than the 2 GTOs. Do you warm your paint? Normally, I am shooting at room temperature. When the colder months are in, I turn the heater on, put the paint in front of them, give it 10 or 15 minutes, make sure they've gotten a chance to warm up and the cans are warm. And but this time of year, it's 65, 70 degrees ambient temperature most of the time, so it's not really much of a problem. At least I don't think it is. But one time I tried to spray when it was cold and I didn't preheat the cans, and it just came out in globs. Wow. When they say use between 50 and 80 degrees, they're not kidding. But obviously, it's no shock. I have much better luck when I use the airbrush than when I use the rattle can. You know, the rattle can, you can buy 2 identical cans, shake them the exact same amount, and start spraying and get 2 different patterns out of 2 different cans. I mean, they're not quite as consistent as we would like them to be. Or at least that's been my experience. And of course, we tend to forget things like when it comes out in spurts, it may not be nothing wrong with the paint. You may have a bad head on it. And it'd be nice if you just buy a bag of the little spray heads and just, when you're done painting, just throw the old one away and stick a new one on. Cleaning those things out is a little bit of a bugger, but it's kind of important to do, because you wind up going, oh, this can's got plenty of paint left. You give it a good shake, it's nice and warm, and then it goes out sideways or something because there's some crud up in the nozzle. Little devil's in the details. Please tell us about that V2 airplane combo behind you. That, for all of you fans of the Tucker automobile, is the proposed Tremulous fighter. This was a World War II proposal for the U.S. military, and believe it or not, actually for the Army. And it was supposed to have a rocket booster stage to send a rocket plane up as an interceptor. This, believe it or not, was not a German V design. This was all American, and I believe it was Alan Tremulous, the guy who came up with the idea. Now, this is my own test pattern that I came up with. The kit, they said make it OD green. I was like, no, I wanted to look cool like a test aircraft with all the telemetry markings on it. And Tremulous is the same guy, I believe, who designed the Tucker. I know some of you guys can comment on that because some of y'all are very knowledgeable, more so than I. This came from Fantastic Plastic. It's one of those few 148 scale kits. I had to put my own pilot in it. This is the model I used for my little Tarbist Intercept cartoon. Thousand Shades of Alex Tremulous, thank you. John, I knew you were gonna know. But he was the mad genius behind the Tucker, amongst other things. One of those unsung geniuses out there that came up with all kinds of incredible ideas. And the irony is that, if you remember, we actually did field and got the Canadians to buy, instead of the CF-105 Arrow that they should have made, we got them to buy the Beaumark. And the Beaumark was basically an unmanned late generation answer to the Tremulous. And I put all my books right here so I have resource material at my fingertips. And for those who aren't familiar, that's the CF-105 Arrow. Absolutely fantastic airplane that was designed by the Canadians during the Cold War. And this is the airplane that was so good it scared the living crap out of the entire American military-industrial complex. The U.S. Air Force, the minute the U.S. Air Force said they wanted to buy this thing, every political string that could be pulled was pulled in the Eisenhower administration to kill it. And they were able to persuade the Prime Minister of Canada to go with the Beaumark missile, which was sort of a follow-on to the idea that Tremulous had of a rocket-launched interceptor. Yeah, I think we owe the Canadians a big apology for that one. But the Beaumark was a cool-looking rocket, I got to admit. And to make matters worse for the poor Canadians is that when they killed the project, all of the human resources people, i.e. vultures, headhunters from the American aerospace industry went racing up to Canada to hire all of their engineers, because they had some really, really, really good ones. And I tell you what, I've still got that CF-105, the Aurora one that was sent to me built, and one of you guys that also sent me a new set of decals. It is on the queue to be stripped and repainted and everything. Half me wants to put it in U.S. Air Force camo markings or air superiority markings, like air defense markings, just to sort of like, should have been. But I'm going to put it in the Canadian markings because they just look so awesome and they're historically correct. Okay. Yeah, I don't blame him. Hey, look, you had him. Okay, I'm not going to go there. Yeah, we've all got one that we're kind of like, thanks, dude. Was somebody talking about, you're saying that Daryl saying mod spell is right. Paint nozzles cheap. Okay, where do you get the paint nozzles? Can you just buy a bag of those things? That's right. Yeah, that's right. Senior man in the Apollo program. And hey, you can ask the Germans. We Americans only steal the very best talent. Yeah, the TSR-2, for those who are unfamiliar, the TSR-2 was a British deep interdiction aircraft. That was another plane that probably should have been put into production. And do you know how the story of the warheads of the Beaumarks sold to Canada? I know about the Beaumark being sold to Canada. I'm not sure about I don't know the story of the warheads. I do know that they had, in fact, the history guy, I think, covered this recently. They had a Beaumark that caught on fire, and here in the good old US of A, and that became a thing. We also had a missile silo that caught, I think, in Little Rock or someplace, that caught on fire, and that also became a thing. It's kind of a miracle we survived the nuclear age without the warhead wouldn't have detonated, but it could have been a nuclear mess if those things that exploded just spilt the material everywhere. No, sorry to hear that, Mudsville. See, there's a misunderstanding about von Braun. What's the famous joke about von Braun? I aimed for the stars and hit London. But von Braun was a propulsion guy, rocket engines, overall rocket design. He although he made his Faustian bargain, he did not want to make weapons, but he was willing to do what you had to do, like so many people are. Eckner and the Hindenburg, we'll give you money for your big Zeppelin as long as you paint big old party sign on the side of it. And I'm not going to say that word because we all know what I'm talking about. Little Rock, that was it. Yes, Little Rock Titan 2s. Thank you. And warheads runner. I understand the idea behind that. But when you think about this, the Dew Line and Pine Tree and all those stations and everything, even though they're often manned by Americans, most of them were in Canada. And it's just another example of American bulldozing foreign policy. Hey, you need our defense. Let us just knock down some trees and come in and take over. And don't worry, we'll control everything in your country. But hey, we never got hit by missiles, so it worked in the long run, at least so far. What was that? I think I talked about this before. I was watching Mystery Science Theater 3000, they were doing a giant mantis, or deadly mantis, about the giant praying mantis. And it starts off with this virtual promotional film about the dew line, where, you know, once there was wilderness, now there's civilization. And you see the massive amount of material and infrastructure that went into building the dew line and everything. And he was the Cambot, or one of them, says, you know, after all this, how could you really bring yourself to disarm? Also love the one where the jets are taking off in formation. Oh, look, the new codependent Air Force. Tuesday winter in July. On the old sitcom News Radio, old Steve Foley, another fellow Canadian, Steve Foley's character is talking about how he playing some video game all night before his SATs and got a low score, and he goes, so instead of going like to Harvard, I went to, he says, like the University of Minnesota. Had beautiful summers, all 2 weeks of it. You would think they would have better safety protocols, but yeah. There's a reason they did not send von Braun and his crowd over to the UK. It's funny, when your missiles have been dropping on people's heads, they really don't care about, you know, understandably, what you can do for them in the future. And Clunk CF1. I'm just reading some of the a lot of American German, English German, and Russian German scientists. Okay, since you brought that up, Tabby, I'm gonna throw a quick thing out here. I was reading the book Countdown, and there's a misunderstanding about the German scientists that the Russians got, and it's kind of key. The people we got, von Braun and those guys, and Dornberger, were what you might call the original thinkers. They were the rocket designers. Most of the rocket scientists that the Russians got, who we left behind, were the production people. They knew how to build rockets. They did not know how to design them. And the irony is even once the Russians got them, they never trusted them. And the Russian scientists certainly didn't trust them. And they actually, other than showing them how to set up a production facility, which was really their forte, the Russian designs themselves are uniquely Russian. The techniques used to construct them, like set up the assembly line and everything, and quality control, they got some of that from the Germans, but the Germans spent a couple of years there, and they didn't get utilized that much. Also, Air and Space did a real good article on that, and they were never trusted. I wonder why. We got the original thinkers, and they've got basically the factory staff workers, which are still a key asset. I don't mean to downplay that. And they definitely improved the Russian way of setting up their rocket facilities. But the designs themselves, the R7s and all that, the Korolev designs, they are they are organic to Russia. They are complete. And the Russians often get a little disrespected. Russia has world-class theoretical people. They're as good as any you'll ever find. They're physicists and the like. They're just held back by a system. Whereas in the West, it tends to be like NASA was set up to make it cooperative, to prevent a redundancy. North American gets this contract, Vought gets that contract, Douglas gets this contract, Beechcraft gets that contract. And NASA is this overarching agency that makes them all, is the ringmaster. Whereas the Russians completely different. The Korolev Design Bureau did it one way, the Aleutian Design Bureau did it another, and you would have a complete redundancy or incompatibility. It caused them a lot of problems, which was probably good for us because they actually made some really good heavy lifters. They still do. They've kind of gotten their act together on that, though, now with Energia and everything. So never underestimate the ability of the Russians to use whatever resources they have to make something where they're extremely pragmatic and incredibly bright. One of the things that actually held us back was the American and Western arrogance towards, a bunch of Slavs, they're not going to be able to make rockets. And next thing you know, Sputnik, beep, beep, beep. Ooh. And the Germans are sitting there going, yeah, if I told you so. And you guys do know that von Braun actually had anticipated this and had a plan in place for it with his stolen rocket. I'm just catching up on some of it. Oh, I'm glad to do it, Rich. Glad to do it. Oh, the Ken Ross incident, yeah. Okay, the stolen rocket incident, the time America stole a rocket from itself, is really, really a classic example of how it goes to show how von Braun survived the Nazis and then flourished in America. The man was bright on many levels. He was an administrative genius. He was very politically savvy. It helped that he was just smart. A man could learn a language in a month. He was fluent in English and German, and I think a couple of languages. He played classical piano. Werner Magnus von Braun. But anyway, he had helped the Army build the Redstone, and they were working on other missiles. And when he saw that the Americans wanted to go with a completely American rocket, so they wanted to use the Vanguard, which is an Aerobee mounted. I mean, it was cobbled together. The Vanguard was pretty cobbled together. It was Aerobee high mounted on a boost. It was a train wreck waiting to happen. I think out of 10 launches, only 2 of them were successful. And it wasn't that the Aerobee was a bad missile. It was just they were trying to extend it and do things it wasn't made for, and they were trying to do it quickly. But to their credit, they did it on national TV. Unlike the Russians, who would report their successes after they happened. But von Braun knew they had a better grasp of what was going on. He knew they weren't going to be able to pull this off in the time frame. Now, he needed a dedicated Redstone rocket, but the military, Chrysler had the production line, and they said, look, you can't have one. Okay, these are all accounted for. They're all part of our national defense. Congress hasn't approved the mission. You don't get one. And what he did was he selected one, apparently almost at random. And he said, we need to do a storage test. You go, what do you mean? Well, these rockets are going to be stored for months or years without being used. We need to see how the metals decay, or what problems crop up, or what happens to the electronics. And everybody kind of nodded their head and was like, that's not a bad idea. So he grabbed one. He whisked it away. Put it in a hanger, put a tarp over it, labeled it a long-term storage test. That wasn't what it was. He already had his guys working on it. He knew that when he got the green light to launch, because he was confident Vanguard wasn't going to work, and he knew when he got the green light to launch this thing, he was going to have a rocket ready with all the modifications he needed. And they weren't going to pluck one out of a production line of weapons because those are already allocated. It's just not how the government works. So when they finally gave him the green light, they're like, well, where are you going to get the rocket? Well, I just happen to have one laying over here. And it just finished its test. Oh, look, And 30 days they had Explorer 1 up. So, and I'm giving you the very compressed story. But he saw that one coming down the pike and just got it. He was good about getting out ahead of things. And interesting guy, complex, easy to vilify, also easy to defend. It just depends on what side of the fence you sit on. I can completely understand why the English would have loved to have seen him dangling from a rope, but that was the world of the time. And a few of the other guys that were with him were really crucial. But the other thing that von Braun had that made him so key wasn't just the Russians had Korolev, politically savvy, administrative genius, rocket scientist par excellence. He was a very good corollary or opposite to von Braun. Von Braun had a couple of advantages, biggest obviously being he was working for the West, which had more resources. And both of them had an uphill battle fighting their own administrations. But the thing that von Braun had going for him, and to an extent Korolev, but the big thing von Braun had going for him was he had cachet across the board. First off, with all the other Germans. I mean, no one, if Werner said it, that was the law. I mean, it wasn't that he was a dogmatic leader. It's that they just had that much faith in him. Korolev, it was kind of the same thing, but Korolev only had his own design bureau. and he was in competition with, and he had guys like Mishin under him who were really trying hard, but they just didn't have his cachet. And but he was competing with was it Tupolev, or I forget offhand, but one of them had actually turned him in before the war and got him stuck in a gulag. So we're not talking about a happy relationship. Von Braun was just in a much better environment to do these things in. And yes, my, I just happened to have a missile. It really was almost that. It was almost that simple. Oh, I forgot. That's right, Spud. And it was launched the day. Yeah, that was just rude of them. I'm just reading real quick. Yeah, and one of the things is when Von Braun, as you guys know, loved models. If you've seen the photograph in his office with all the missiles behind him, and he loved models. I think partly because not only he, I think just being an engineer, engineers tend to like models, but I also think check out grabbing Ministry of Space. Okay, let me make a note of that. Ministry of Space. I like the title. But Von Braun, I think he also understood the impact models had. By having all those models behind his desk, it was a way to inspire the imagination. And Willy Ley, as you guys will remember, was instrumental with Monogram in helping to promote their line of space models. And some of those designs at the famous space taxi were Willy Ley designs. The reason that Willy Ley and Von Braun, well, okay, I'm of Germanic extraction, so I think I can say this without ruffling any feathers. Germans love their engineering and they love models, which is by no means unique to Germans, but it's just part of our DNA. Well, I think the guys also understood the importance of, which is why Von Braun worked with Disney, of getting the American public interested. And if you remember the old Disney episodes of Von Braun, they have these beautiful models that the Disney guys made for them. Oh God, I can imagine what one of those models that was actually used on screen would be worth if you get your hands on it today. I'm sure they're museum pieces, probably in the Smithsonian, but anyway, or Disney. But the point is that you take a guy like Von Braun with his ideas and these Imagineers, and people like Willy Ley who have all the technical stuff. And I've read the books by Willy Ley, and back in the 50s, Willy Ley is talking. He was asked point blank, can girls go into space? And back in the 50s, the height of the madman, bourbon and cigarette era. He said, oh, absolutely, girls will be astronauts. And these guys were out ahead of the game, and they really understood that getting young people interested, and models are cool. They do that even to this day, and models aren't toys. Some toys are models, but you get my point. It's a great way to fire people's imagination, and metal car kits were made by Hugh Bloom or 120. Okay. I watched that on Disney last night. Oh, yeah. I've watched that several times. It never gets old. I was too young to see it when it first came out. But, yeah, I actually built... I'm actually going to get some more of the... okay. Let's say there's a rumor that I once heard. We'll go with that. Glencoe couldn't put TWA Moonliner because they didn't have the rights. But if you look at what they do call it, the Mars liner, it just happens to have a TWA that can be clipped out of the decals real easy and put on there. Just saying. And yes, that was noted by the lawyer that was handling it on behalf of whoever held the rights. I think it was the Disney attorney. And apparently she was like, clever job. And let it slide. Don't ask me how I know. Ask me no questions. I'll tell you no lies. Scott German, born with a wrench in my hand. Hey, yeah, really. Fastway. That was it. Thank you, Modspell. Fastway, which just happens to have we don't want the bad guys to find out. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, and everybody's in a fast way. I really, I wish, first off, I wish they still taught shop in school. I don't know if they do or not. But I really wish around the 5th or 6th grade that in like just an arts and crafts class, they would have the kids just build 1 or 2 simple models. And they can be of a car. It doesn't have to be anything military. I'm sure the local, educational establishment would prefer it wasn't. So a spaceship and a car. It's just something like that. Maybe a dinosaur. Kits like that. Educate just if you could get kids around 8 or 10 years old just to build 1 or 2 in school, I'm sure some of them would take a shine to it. And I don't remember if I ever built one as part of a school in school or not. I know I built them as school projects. Heck, Mom, you have to buy me this because I need it for a diorama for school.
For tomorrow.
For tomorrow, yeah. So we need to get building. But let's see. They couldn't use BOAC for the Comet jetliner. Okay, there you go. But you could build it as an Abco Airways. Snip, snip, snip. I don't know how many of you guys are into model trains. John just... Everybody read the Fast Sports comment. Model building will pay dividends in university when you end up shopping at IKEA. Yeah, that it will. Yes, the Glencoe is the old Strombecker, and also a lot of other stuff. He has a lot of the old ITC kits too. I have the Explorer 1 satellite. That's an ITC kit. And you can always tell the ITC kits at a glance because they have some kind of play value, something that opens on them or works on them. The holy grail of ITC kits, there are a handful of kits out there that are holy grail kits. One of them is the complete ITC Thor missile that comes out and you crank it up and it'll stand up to that stuff. I haven't been able to find one anywhere. I seriously doubt there's an unbuilt one floating around out there, but you could probably conservatively get $1,500 for it if you found one that was complete, maybe more. That is a holy grail kit. The other one is the XF103 or the Rapier that was made. I think that was also an ITC kit. And the only person I know that even has one, he's already built it, is Alan Urey over at Fantastic Plastic. And he even admits that's the jewel in his crown. And he's got a nice collection of models. Even a Diorama Custer's Last Stand, heck, that would actually probably be popular these days. Oh yes, a quibble, a quibble. I don't know how you say that. Anyway, Kibble is asking if I ever fly U-Control. As a kid, I flew them a lot, even as a teenager. And I still have somewhere a DVD with a downloaded 8mm film, about 3 seconds of me going around with a Cox PT-19. And I am working on the WinMac video right now. Now, WinMac, which is a contraction of 2 names, obviously, are the people that invented the 049 engine and actually made some of the first pre-made they actually did make the first pre-made, they're ahead of Cox, pre-made U-Control airplanes. And that was a little cartoon, a little advertisement showed the video. They got bought out by AMF around, I think, 58. That's the video I'm working on right now. They I didn't appreciate how big they were because by the time I got into it, Cox was the dominant name. But yes, and my brother also used to build. He and his buddies also used to build what they called the Profile series, which it was like a balsa kit with the wings, but the body was just a flat profile, and they were cheap. And you bolt an 049 on front. If it crashed it, you weren't out much, but you had to build those. Glencoe's the old Stromberg and ITC, and they've got some others also. That's all covered in the Glencoe video. I actually did that one twice, and I really want to thank Nick Argento at Glencoe. He is Glencoe, and he spent quite a bit of time. He made a couple phone calls and gave me a ton of great information that really helped it. Made a much better video out of it. When I can talk to the people like Pete over at Atlantis or over at Glencoe talking to Nick. Or Andy from Aurora, or Jim Keeler, these guys. It adds so much depth because they can tell you things you're not going to find in print. and or get to talk to TD, and because I know, sadly, a lot of these people have passed. I'll never get to talk to them, and so but I can talk to people who knew them, and it's really interesting stuff if you're into it like I am. I'm trying to preserve a little bit of the history. Yeah, the ITC B29. Yeah, if my piece of free advice to you is if you see any complete ITC kit at a decent price, probably wouldn't be a bad idea to grab it. It's only going to go up in value, or at least hold its value. And there's probably always going to be a collector out there somewhere that'll be interested in it, even if it's the most off-the-wall thing. ITC made a lot of kits. Battling Betsy Tank Walker. Yeah, I think it was. That's the one I'm thinking of. It's the big scale one. You can actually still find a few of those floating around. They're not outrageous, $1,500 probably. They're not super detailed, but there are people who've bought them and detailed them out, and they're pretty big. A lot of people have converted them to, well, I say a lot. Some people have converted them to RC. I'm not familiar with Jim Walker. I have to look that up. Yeah, a lot of guys did, but my dad built his airplanes when of course, it was the 40s, but they flew U-control aircraft, and U-control was no control. Yeah, I splattered enough plastic all over the front yard to, fortunately that Cox, it was the rubber bands, it was designed to come apart on impact, and boy, I put that puppy to the test. I was flying, the engine cheeks were gone, we're strapping stuff around to hold the engine, and the wingtips are, oh my God, they weren't completely indestructible, but they were destruction resistant as you can get. Wait, I just been offered an air stick kit. Wait, are you talking about was it the Monogram Sky Stick? Is that what you're talking about, Fishing with Bob? If you are, I recommend you grab it, because I looked around for one. I just wanted to see two companies made these things you could put the model on. San Juan made one, and the San Juan guy actually has one still in the box, which is, I wouldn't build that because it's still in the box, and it's quite the artifact. But also, Monogram made something called the Sky Stick, which you could put in, supposedly any one of the 148 scale models on. And in my video on Monogram, I thought the thing was ridiculous, but apparently there are a lot of people that really enjoyed it as a kid, so it was more of a toy. But I couldn't find one to save my life. I wanted to get one just to see what it was all about. So if it's a Sky Stick, yeah, Fishing with Bob, I would say grab it. Yeah, absolutely grab it. And do me a favor. If you get it and put it together, take some video, show us what it does, and send it to me, and I'll use it in one of the videos, because I've never been able to find any video of one, and the only pictures I have been able to find of one are just of the box art, so it's still a bit of a mystery to me. But apparently a few people had them, and I guess I don't know if they break easy or it's just kids can destroy anything, but very few of them seem to have survived. Yes, I did, Raymond, I did do a history on Nito. It's out there on the channel. And they had a lot of airliners. And apparently had a pretty good reputation. The Intex Pocket Pack. Yep. I believe I just got a couple of those. No, those are Profla packs. Those are World War I airplanes. I have for April, for the big builds in April, I have two of those little, I think it's Profla packs or pockets of little World War I biplanes that I'm going to use as warm-ups before I jump on the Edward kit. And I've been watching Mark's progress on his SE5 from Edward, and he's doing a magnificent job, but he's really having to take his time with it. That's not something you can rush if you want it to look good. It'd be a shame to waste such a. And I see the fine metal work he's doing with the guns and everything. Whew! I'm both charged up to try it and kind of dreading it at the same time, which is a good place to be when it's a challenge. Okay, you had the Helldiver U-Control. Yeah, I had the PT-19. I had the Stuka. I never flew my own Stuka, that black Cox Stuka, because it was such a handful. My older brother flew it a couple of times. My dad fiberglassed the wings back on that thing at least 3 times. We never ran a full tank. It was just such a trick to fly that thing. The only problem I have with flying U-Control today is I get dizzy turning around in my chair. So, as you get older, the inner ear, all the tubes up there start to, the little hairs in there, it all starts to stiffen, and it's easy, it's harder. You get dizzier easier, and it's harder to recover from it. Definitely going around in a circle, that's a young man's game. Oh, you were asking about the IM kits. Northern Man, were you the one that sent me the email asking with the pictures of the IM kits, the International Model kits that were made by IPMS? Because I haven't had a chance to look into that. I think I just saw the email today. I think IM stands, it says international, but I think it's International Models or International Modeler. And somebody thought those might have been done by IPMS or sanctioned by them. But that's, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that much about them yet. I need to look into that. So, the problem is, if it doesn't have much of an internet presence, unless I can find a book on it, or somebody who knows something about it. Half the information I get comes just from comment threads from people who had some association with it. A lot of times you can't actually find any websites or anything about them. Getting information on the more obscure companies is a real challenge. I remember the Airfix battle, the ones with the vacuum form bases. I built many of those. I did the World War I one. I think I did the Pearl Harbor one. Yeah, Fisher and Bob, I'd absolutely grab that. And send me some pictures or something. I'd really, at maxsmodels@yahoo.com, I'd really like to see that. I've been curious about that thing for a while. It's nice to know there's still mysteries out there. As much every time I think, well, I've learned so much, and then it's like, ooh, a whole new thing I knew nothing about, and, and a new mystery, and that just keeps it fun, keeps me fired up. The Cox Spitfire, yep, I remember those, and I really, okay, I know old plastic models. Sky Stick. How did I miss that? If it's there, because I go to that website sometimes. It's a good resource. I think it's old plastic models. Box Art Den. Yeah, old plastic model. Yeah. Oh well, I'll go back and look. I missed it. They had a lot of good information on Rico and who's that one that did nothing but make other people's stuff? Not IMC? Oh gosh, it's all becoming a blur. Sky Stick seemed like 2 minutes of fun put away into oblivion. Yeah. Oh, good. The B25. Yeah, that's a good kit. The closest thing to a successful really successful biplane I've done where the rigging is turned is a Gulf Hawk, and the Gulf Hawk was made to be rigged. It has hooks for the rigging, and it's 1/32 scale, so it's big enough I could work on it. So it was a good warm up kit. I did a build video on it. Are you taking our model build photos? Oh, good. Yeah, the British Godzilla. Yeah, my Monarch. Yeah, no, just send them maxsmodels@yahoo.com. I'm putting the next. I think it's 12. I'm collecting pictures. What I normally do is there's no schedule on the viewers' builds. It's when I get about 125 photos, something like that, enough to make a good 15-20 minute view. That's when I kind of cobble it together. And I use no two of them. Well, obviously no two of them are the same because you guys are sending different pictures. But there's no fixed motif. If you send me a lot of build photos, I'll probably show the progress of the build up to the finish and make that a section, and so on and so forth. I just cobble it together with whatever I've got, and oh, they did the Cater and Lincoln kits. Okay. So any idea if they had anything to do with IPMS or this helicopter on a wire? That I think I might have had something like that. And we're going back to the 60s at that point, though. Marks-a-copter. Okay, that sounds right. Remember all the Marks toys by Marks? Vertibird. That sounds familiar. Electric Spitfire. There was Sky Mountain. Had two little race planes on wires. You'd race each other around. I think it was Sky Mountain. Something like that. Sky Stick has one. Okay, I'm not going there. I had a Marks helicopter. If you tilted it, some metal bombs would hit a spring-loaded submarine that exploded. For when they really knew how to make war toys. Kind of makes you miss the Cold War. Actually, the Federal Rotodyne kit is back in production, isn't it? I forget it, but I seem to recall. Don't think it's Atlantis. It might be round 2, but I think the Fairy Rotodyne's back in production. Yeah, cocks would bite your fingers in hard. These are 49s. I usually use a spring, but I knew some guys would use a screwdriver to prop them, and I see guys doing that with RCs. Of course, a lot of guys have the electric starters now. These still guys out there RC field flying on nitro. Now, the other thing I was going to talk about, I think you guys are really going to appreciate this. Let's see. First off, I got this from Megan. This is an email. Max, after your Estes video, I was thinking how much influence they had, so I wrote this. Sir, I don't know if this is how it works, but I would like to nominate Vern and Gleda Estes, founders of the Estes Model Rocket Company. Not only did they establish the hobby of model rockets, but they have probably done as much, if not more, to encourage young people to have an interest in aviation and space than any astronaut or pilot. The Estes Company may not be as big as Boeing, Lockheed, or even Cessna or Piper, but I'll bet they've had a bigger influence on young people to get into the aviation industry. Regards, they put their name, and this was written to the National Aviation Hall of Fame. Then they got a reply. Good morning. We are thrilled that you are interested in nominating Vernon Gleda Estes for induction into the National Aviation Hall of Fame. It's through people like you that we find out about our nation's legends in aerospace. The first step is making a nomination, and it gives them the address, and they attached. Megan is the person who sent the reply. Douglas sent the original email to the National Aviation Hall of Fame, and I think that is just awesome. And I can't think of two people who more rightly deserve to be there. I would like to see that happen. Blue Troopers are great people who do incredible things. That's just who you guys are. But I thought you guys would enjoy hearing about that. And an April build challenge. I've had a couple of guys. It's interesting. My wife's doll group, because she does the handmade dolls, they have these events that they do like that, and each of them will get assigned a character or something, and it's and I've several guys have recommended some sort of a build challenge on this channel, and I am certainly open to your ideas. Since I'm going to be doing a couple of World War I airplanes, I would probably, if somebody says what's your build challenge at the moment, I would probably say, some kind of fully rigged World War I airplane would be the challenge. But I know a lot of people, the minute you say World War I and rigging, their eyes glaze over. I know, because I'm still kind of one. I'm like, oh my god, look, see, glaze. You guys shoot me some emails if you think you'd like a build challenge. If enough people are interested, I figure we'd want to have at least 5 or 6 people that really want to do it. Give you the month of April. Pick your own airplane. I'll call it a biplane build challenge. Yeah, it doesn't have to be World War I. It could be a Stearman or a Waco or a race plane or something. But if you guys be up for something like that, I think we can put something together. Make it once we get all the images and everything. I'll put together a video about it. One thing I won't say suggest, but I think would be kind of cool if you want to do it. Now, I know a lot of people, for obvious reasons, cherish their privacy. They don't want their face out on the internet. I mean, I myself have a face made for radio, but I would say if we're going to do something like that, then maybe you might want to have a picture of you with your model. But that would by no means be a requirement. That sounds like a pretty cool challenge. Actually, I think I might like to do that. So if you guys are interested, shoot me an email, and if I get 5 or 6 people that are willing to commit to it, and and Mark, I think we can probably include your SC5 in that, because you won't be done until April. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. Give you an excuse to start another one. I challenge you to do a SPAD. Now that airplane probably has more rigging than any of them because it has 12 struts instead of 8. Because the SPAD had 8 main struts and then the 4 cabane struts. And hope to talk about paint and get Model Master anymore. A Rust-Oleum, and I'm an enamel guy looking for alternatives. Okay. Well, actually, I did want to talk about paint and putty and stuff on this one. So, I'm kind of guilty just using whatever's the hobby shop, which is getting to be a lot of the Rust-Oleum stuff now and Tamiya. And I'm probably doing more Tamiya than anything else. What do you guys, now that Rust-Oleum owns testers and all that stuff, what are you guys doing? And the acrylics are still out there, a lot of them, but what are you guys doing for your enamels? I'm afraid testers may be going away because Rust-Oleum's looking at that as just that's not worth keeping the factory open. You realize all the model airplane paint that Rust-Oleum makes through testers probably doesn't add up to an hour's worth of production for their main paint facilities. Well, John Ashley Smith, I think a 148th Monogram SE5 would be a perfect candidate. Hmm, 2X. I was just talking about that earlier. That I've had pretty good luck with it, but there's some things you're probably not going to work for if you got to get into a small area or something. I'm hoarding all my testers. Got to use it someday. Keep it shaking. It takes longer to build a ship model than a real ship. That's true. Mr. Hobby. Okay, there you go. Oh, by the way, just a completely quasi-related side note. I had asked about if you had to have one airplane, World War II, it would be for me, it'd be the Mossy. For today, it'd be the C-130. In World War I, it would have been either, if it was an Allied aircraft, it would have been the SE-5A. If it was a German aircraft, it would have been the Fokker D-7. Because fighters were the only airplanes of much relevance back then. And both of those airplanes not only had excellent combat records, they were both fairly easy to fly, so they didn't have a lot of accidents. Everybody talks about how great the Sopwith Camel was, but they lost as many Sopwiths in accidents as they lost in combat. The thing was, if you were on it all the time, it was like balancing yourself on a beach ball. Then the Fokker triplane was kind of the same way, which, by the way, actually had 3.5 wings, but we've been there. I heard Rust-Oleum will bring back the Model Master since. I hope so. Yeah, that brings up an interesting, what is the real difference between a lacquer and an enamel? Because I treat them both the same way, but it seems to me that lacquers dry a lot faster, and that could be my imagination. No, good. Go get that SE5 out, dust that puppy off, and keep on modeling. Model on, model on. Yeah, you can decant a spray can. It's I think you're gonna, because the way the stuff's made, I think you're gonna lose a lot. But I sometimes decant a little and use it on the brush, but I've never actually decanted it into an air gun. No, I don't know about the Type 9C. Wasn't that Milch Cow, the big one, the big U-boat? Type 7 was their primary combat boat. There you go, 128 scale Revell Sopwith. That blue triplane I had, I think, was one of the Revell 128 ones. It was built that as a kid. I only had one color paint, black, so I painted the tires, the guns, and the engine. Everything else was just the plastic and the decals. Just reading some of the... Yeah. Lacquer is shinier. Oh, okay. There you go, Johnny. You got that Stearman off the shelf. Oh, okay. Lacquer has a higher levels of VOC, so it cures faster, more coats per day. All right. That explains that. Yeah, the Type 9 were Milch Cows. That's what I thought. They were the resupply submarines. Tell you guys a quick milch cow bombing story. Old Marine I knew who had served in the First World War, the Second World War in Korea. He was a SBD radio man gunner for part of his time. And he was kind of like, we're stuck here patrolling the Atlantic coastline looking for submarines down the Caribbean and stuff. And, he felt he was getting cheated. He went out where the real war was going on. Well, then one day, a scout plane, I think it was a SOC-3, I think, the biplane scout plane. But as the sun was setting, it flew over some obscure little, and I fly over the Caribbean all the time. There are a gazillion freaking little islands out there and islets and stuff. And that's why the drug runners love to go through there anyway, a million places to hide. And they saw a German submarine that had built a little docking facility, and it was a milch cow, Type 9 milch cow. And it was there dropping off supplies for the other U-boats in the Atlantic to pick up. And they had this little impromptu and the guy, of course, immediately is blazing away with his radio as fast as he can, telling everybody. But since, remember, it's World War II technology and the sun is setting, so the Marines get attached. And from my understanding, this is the only Marine Corps combat action of the Caribbean theater. But they, I say Marine, it could have been Navy, but they arm up a bunch of dive bombers and they fly out there. They take off at the dark and get there at the break of dawn because they have to bomb in daylight. And, of course, the sub's gone when they get there, so they just bomb the snot out of the facility they'd built when everything had been removed. And I imagine they probably sent in some ground troops to go look, see if there's anything left. But it was like, yes, the great Caribbean dive bombing action that no one knows about. And I'm thinking, well, that's interesting. Why come I've never read about it? He goes, if your sole combat action was bombing an empty facility because, out in the middle of the Caribbean, would you want the world to know about it? Blackers give me a headache and I almost don't. Man, maybe they gas out quicker. The milch cow was a Type 16, or Type 14. Oh, okay. Derived from the Type 9. Ah, okay. See, learning has occurred. Prior to the Caribbean. Well, as we say when we fly the Caribbean, that's right. That's the idea. We're the pilots of the Caribbean. It was never a sub, just German tourists. Und the Z-Boot. So, another email. Now, guys, this one, I'm going to put a graphic up here for you that I made just for this occasion. Let's see, where is it? Here we go. All right. Now, I don't know. I remember this kit being for sale. I never bought it. Remember, you guys may remember when Miller Beer, and before that it was just they had some other name, but Miller Beer sponsored the Sky Typers, which was a group of T6s that could fly wingtip to wingtip. They each had smoke generators, and they had a computer that was in the 70s, so it's pretty primitive. But they had a computer that taught back and forth. It would just each plane would put out jets, and they could literally type across the sky flying wingtip to wingtip. So. And they are now the Geico Sky Typers, but apparently it was a family-owned operation, and they had to sell the business off, and then the planes were bought by another company, and now Geico's got some of the planes. But anyway, and I want you to notice the tails are different on these planes, but here, let me read the email. And this is from Charles. And I asked him if it was okay to relate this, and he said it was okay. Okay. Here's another story for you. I actually made, and this is Charles speaking, I actually made a decent living off monogram 148 scale AT6s in junior high school and senior high school. I worked, did odd jobs, anything that an A&P or an IA could sign off, and swept the hangar floor at the place that restored real aircraft and made models that were identical to the real ones that were there. I ended up selling copies of planes to their owners for $25 to $50 each. And I'm assuming this is the mid-70s, so you can just double that for today's value. Some people paid more because they really liked my attention to every little detail, right down to antenna placement. Then one day, I met the part owner of a company called Sky Typers. Well, it's family-owned business. He saw my models and invited me to his office for a meeting. I was 14 years old and didn't have a car, but I had a good bicycle, and off I went from Compton, California to Los Alamitos. And he's got that spelled Compton, C-O-M-T-O-N. I don't know if he means Compton or if Compton is a different place. But anyway, so I rode my bicycle everywhere back then. Anyway, a deal was made, and I got a part-time job on their ground crew. They had me building entire sets, 5 kits each, because there were 5 airplanes in that squadron, of their Miller Brewing, of their AT-6s, and gave sets to their customers around 1981-82. Okay, so it's 81-82. They signed a deal with Miller Brewing and became known as the Miller Squadron. That's what I remember them as the Miller Squadron. And by the time I graduated high school and had a car, they signed another deal with Monogram to produce the Miller SNJ. All the SkyTyper T6s were actually SNJ2s, so each kit got a scratch-built rudder. And that's what I want to point out. You look at the kit on the box and the actual airplane, you can see they have different rudders. So he had a scratch-built rudder for each airplane, which apparently he got quite good at. So, by the time I graduated high school, anyway, that's when all hell broke loose because I no longer had to buy the kits. They got them by the case for me, directly from Monogram. I remember being rushed to get sets done and literally working 18 hours straight to complete sets, getting 3 to 4 hours sleep, then deliver them, which you can do when you're 14 years old. It was so easy on the Miller kits because all the decals were there. Before the Miller deal, I was the best friend of both microscale decals and scale master decals because everything was done by scratch. Very shortly thereafter, the bottom fell out and Monogram went away, as did the kit, so it was pretty much the end, and there was no internet back then. So I never did hear what happened to the companies until now. However, those models helped me to restore a 69 MGB GT, and I've owned many of those cars since then. I still have several. SkyTypers moved to Palm Springs. Many of the cars since are to Palm Springs Airport because Douglas Aircraft got the C-17 contract and needed the space at Long Beach Airport for the new production hangar, so eminent domain forced us out. And he goes on to his own life. But then the good part kicks in again. He's talking about his stash, but he talks about there's a footnote to all this. He learned they sold off their fleet of SNJ2s, I believe, to a company in Japan about 15 years ago, and now they're flying completely different aircraft. So I guess the ones flying today are not the same ones. While the East Coast SkyTypers are still flying their SNJ2s, are now sponsored by Geico. So that's it. The Geico SNJ2s are the East Coast SkyTypers. And reluctantly, as far as I'm concerned, known as the Geico SkyTypers. Don't know if the original family still owns them. Now, there's a follow-on that came up later. He gives me permission to tell the story. I'm a firm believer that things will go full circle. We may never know the reason for it, but something's happened. He drives a truck now. One day he saw an ad in the aviation section of Craigslist, parts for sale from a Miller Squadron SNJ. And the main photograph was them in formation. He could even recognize some of the pilots. He had to find out about this, who the seller was. So basically he links up with the seller, who was hesitant, understandably, to reveal himself. But when he starts talking to the guy and starts dropping names and everything, you realize, okay, this guy's legit. He really did work there. They both worked there at the same time. And so he emailed him some pictures, and then they made contact and so on and so forth. He gets some of his personal stuff, which I won't share. But, talk about the Great Styrene River. I mean, a 14-year-old kid who manages to make a pretty good side job out of building model airplanes for the company that flies them. And he's getting his exercise because he's riding his bicycle. And then when it all goes away, 40 years later, he managed to loop back around and find somebody that still has some of the original stuff. And it's just small world at Wheelers. Aviation is a small world. But I just thought that was a cool story that you guys might enjoy me sharing. And when I was 14 years old, if I could have made $25 a kit building model airplanes, you would have never gotten me out of the workshop. What am I talking about? I'm kind of doing that now. Well, thus, my point is made. My dad built models for the hobby shop for spending money. Well, that's cool. Well, Warren Buffett build Model 86. I think I shared this with you guys before, but a gentleman I know who's in his mid-90s now, still sharp as a tack, lived in Hawaii just before the war, and he would build models, wooden tissue models, for Cornelia Fort and Marguerite Gambo, who were the two women who were flight instructors in Pearl Harbor, and both of them were present during the attack. In fact, both of them were the air during the attack. In fact, Caroline Fort, although she was much younger than the woman portrayed, Caroline Fort is the actual woman that was flying when the squadron of Jap planes went by. Well, that's not exactly the way it happened, but the fact that they even represented that in Tora Tora Tora. When you see all the Japanese coming to the harbor and that little yellow steerman, and she's like, "Yeah, I'll take over, Davey." She did kick it into spin and turn it away, but it wasn't the whole formation going around. It was over John Rogers Field, and she saw, I think it was a Val dive bomber go flashing right, almost hit her, and she saw the red meatballs and realized real quick she had no business being in the air. Marguerite Gambo was flying on the other side of the island. And Carolina Fort got strafed. Caroline Fort, she got strafed after they landed, but they didn't hit her. I think they might have hit the plane. Sadly, she was killed during the war in a mid-air collision in Texas. But I think she was the first of the Wasps to be killed. But anyway, so building models for money. Novel concept. So, I have a question for you guys. I have not had the best luck with putty. And I know some guys talk about you need to mix a little thinner to thin it out so it'll spread easier. Do any of you guys do that? Oh, I love Tora Tora Tora. I think Tora Tora is a great movie. It's actually it's like what they call a docudrama. It's dramatized, but it's extremely accurate. Tora Tora Tora, Longest Day, a couple others like that go into a lot of detail, and they try to get as right as best they can. Most airbrush paint is thinner. You can easier brush. Yeah, but I'm thinking about the putty. In other words, the filler. Does anybody actually mix the filler with any? Because Vallejo and Tamiya. I mostly use the Tamiya now. I've kind of gotten away from the testers. It just seems to work better. Yeah, it's a saying the wasps don't get a lot of attention or a lot of credit. Using AK putty, it's water soluble. It's a putty nightmares, yeah. Tamiya white, I've been using the gray putty. I'll see if I can get some of the white putty. Dude, Tora Tora Tora's movie. That other one is the movie whose name I do not mention. That movie was just insultingly bad. It insulted the Doolittle's Raiders because, contrary to what you saw in that movie whose name shall not be mentioned, Mr. Dissolve Putty. I'm not familiar with that one. All of the B-25, none of them were fighter pilots. All of them were experienced, but you had to be an experienced B-25 pilot to even apply for the job. And the 30 Seconds Over Tokyo is a much better telling of that story. Okay, Adam, well, I'm glad you got to make it. I'll be wrapping up here shortly. I have a family function this evening, and I think my wife wants the bedroom back. And yes, that is my command center. That's why I have this magnificent partition behind me. Oh, that's a thought. You can add acrylic. Well, normally I would putty before I paint, but if I've already painted and want to fill a crack, but I might have to give that a shot. One of the deluxe materials, perfect plastic putty from England. Magic Sculpt. My wife uses Magic Sculpt on her dolls. When she made like the Klingons, she used to make the ridges. She made the 7 of 9s. I think that Magic Sculpt is what she uses, and it's stuff. She does some incredible work with those things. Milliput. I've heard of Milliput, but I've never used them. Let me make a note of that. Because I'm guilty of buying what's at the hobby. I like to support the local hobby shop, and they pretty much carry Tamiya products. Oh, and testers. Typical hobby shop, I might see if they've got some of this other stuff. I got to admit, they have 1 or 2 items there. Like thinking, what is that? I don't know what that does. That does not do what I think that does. Okay. Well, you know what? That still might be worth picking up anyway. Fishing with Bob. That sounds like a. Now, was it just a piece of flight deck, or is it something the plane goes on? Oh well, no worries. False alarm. Got all excited for nothing. Richard Dayton, that's right. Okay. It's fun. I was just watching an interview with Richard Dayton last night. Richard Dayton is a famous Hollywood modeler, and he made both of the Starship, the 3-foot and the 12-foot Starship Enterprise for the original show, and as he mentioned, he did a lot of the ships for Tora Tora Tora. Years ago, and you can find some of these pictures, Dave's Warbirds, I think. There was a big magazine article run about the making of those models. My brother used to have the magazine. Of course, it got away from us. I think you can find it online. But it shows how they made the models. And, of course, they make them like you make any model ship. You know, the plans of the ship. They cut the formers and stringers and covered them in fiberglass. But, and some of those models are still on displays in museums. There was a military museum in Tampa. I think it's closed, that had one of the aircraft carriers. I think it was one, I forget the scale. All the airplanes on it, they didn't use kits. All the airplanes on it were custom made for it because of its like 1 to 100 scale or something. But, I mean, we're talking about a ship that was 30 feet long or some model that was 20 or 30 feet long. But remember, in Hollywood, bigger the model, better it looks. Yeah, I use X20A. Yeah, I got Milliput down here. Yeah, they were absolutely... Yeah, the little guys are all bomber pilots. And... flaking. You're not the first person I've heard that had said they had problems with it flaking. I haven't had that problem personally, but I have heard it that it does or can. Yeah, bigger, better detail, and also it scales out better if you have to use water or something, because water and fire don't scale. Burbank House of Hobbies, a throwback of expert builders. I'll bet you around that area they got some real knowledgeable guys, because that's where, you know, you guys know I'm a big addict to that sense of scale, Pierce Film sense of scale videos on. I didn't realize that Independence. I just saw last night Independence Day, all that whole ramp full of F-18s. That was all 1/32 scale kits. They were buying every 1/32 scale F-18 they get their hands on. They had, and from every maker, because they had needed so many of them. Lightweight spackling. So I thought. I'm just reading the comments here. So we ended up with a I say we, when I was I ended up with a big piece of cardboard about yay so big that was this thick because it was corrugated, and I think I'm going to use that for the base for the kit and car diorama. But I have discovered I have a little bit of a problem, and that is that once I'm done making it and get the photos taken and everything, I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to put it. I don't want to have them so close together that it looks crammed. I want to have a little space on it, and I've got some plans. Oh yeah, I watch Pierce films all the time, and lots of green stuff for my resin guys. And that's another thing I got with the Felix stove, because I'm planning to do it. I'm still trying to figure out where the hell I'm going to put the thing when I'm done with it. I don't want to hang it up because I don't want to become a dust collector, but it's not going to fit on a single shelf in my house or in the TARDIS. So, of course, it will get a place of honor. No, I don't have a Mechagodzilla. Only two of the Godzillas I have are actual models. The rest, one's an RC. The rest were just dolls that my wife, or action figures that my wife got. Then there's the big Polar Light one I built, and the pink one that I made with the Metaluna mutant. And the Polar Lights and the Metaluna pink one are the only actual kits that I built. I don't, and I think it's a lot of evidence showing that Mechagodzilla is going to make a showing in the new movie. Okay, here's your trivia question for the day. Who'd win, a Jaeger from Pacific Rim or Mechagodzilla? I'll let the fanboys fight that one out. And correct me if I'm wrong, I heard a rumor that Godzilla's go-kart was going back into production, and apparently that's a really popular kit. And I'm trying to remember where I saw that. John, I was thinking exactly that. If you could make like a King Kong and Godzilla slot cars, but if you get, they made the Godzilla's go-kart and King Kong's crew or whatever they called it. Those two actually could probably be converted into actual, or you could just get a King Kong and a Godzilla and just put them on chassis and race them around. Terrify the crap out of the Anoles in the shed. Yeah, actually de-icing was a problem. Japan has a lot of very cold weather, a lot of snow, and people forget a lot of Japan's up on a latitude about the same as Boston. And that time of year over the ocean, they were liable to run into a lot of crap. Weather was a huge issue. In fact, they actually took off in some very bad weather, which arguably kind of might have worked to their favor. Oh, great. The Japanese revived ancient bacteria. Did they not see that movie? Was it Terror Island? 1-to-1 tar biscuit. Mecha. So you're saying, so Kenneth, are you saying that the Mecha would win against the Jaeger? Because my vote goes for Mechagodzilla. He's just packing too much artillery to lose. Yeah. Oh, Bill says Jaeger from Pacific Rim would win. Dreamberry says Jaeger. Oh, I spelled Gypsy Danger. We're getting specific now. Gotta get a drag it up. That's it. King Kong's Thronester. That I couldn't remember the name of it. If this next movie has Kong and Godzilla, one of them killing the other, and I think the decision on who will win the fight will be based on who they think has the stronger franchise for the future. Because that's how Hollywood works. Heck, if you guys remember Firefly, I didn't realize this till I watched the documentary yesterday. My wife already knew this. The reason they bumped off in the movie Serenity, the reason they bumped off Wash and Reverend Book was because they were hoping to get a second or third movie in those guys' schedules. They couldn't commit. So, well, if you can't commit, we're going to get rid of the characters. This is how, writers get stuck putting crap into a story they don't want to put in there. And, of course, they later admitted that by killing off Book and Wash, they pretty much ended any possibility of getting another movie or an extension of the series made. To me, I think Firefly is one of the best television shows that was ever conceived, and Whedon did a great job with it, but the suits just ruined it. With the putting in the death slot, showing it out of order, killing off important characters. It's just like, they made the great step to get it started, and then misstepped every way after that. Whereas the creative end was really doing a good job. That'll always be one of my favorite sci-fi shows, Firefly and the movie Serenity. Shiny. Okay, John, did you see this? Mechagodzilla. Max's Godzilla model set on top of a Roomba. Okay, there's your slot car. You make a Roomba and you pull a Godzilla on top of it. But he has to be racing another Roomba with a cat on top of it. Yeah, Suits did ruin another one. Yes, Alan Tudyk, that's correct. Wash, he is the alien on Resident Alien, which is I'm really enjoying that show. It's if you guys haven't seen Resident Alien, I think it's a lot of fun. Heck, they even brought back Sadakana. Useful and fun. My wife has a Roomba. I ought to see about sticking with the Godzillas. The cat would probably enjoy that. Our cat does not ride the Roomba. She just lays up. Honey just lays up there and yawn, watches it go around the room. And what can I say? She's advanced cat. Yeah. Have you ever built a salvage one? No, but when I started making in fact, right here, I have found another hollow tube in the house. It's going to be turned into a trash rocket, and I'm calling these, in honor of Salvage One, the old TV show, I'm calling these Junker Rockets my salvage series. Let's see. I have a picture you guys might get a tickle out of. This is Honey, our cat, when the Roomba's going around. That is pretty much her. I could watch this thing move all day long. $40K has ruined. Is that Warhammer 40K? Max von Braun. I have never personally gotten into Warhammer 40K, but I know some people have, and apparently it's got a very strong following. Cats. We have what do you call it? The thing where you can watch it later, record it, Comcast or whatever. Space Above and Beyond actually was pretty good. They kept that in the realm of believability. They kept the characters. Yeah, I liked it. And that, what does they call it? Hammerhead. That was a pretty cool ship. I think Fantastic Plastic makes a model of it. I lived in Nathan Fillion's hometown. Have a friend that remembers him as the little crap head next door neighbor kid. Yeah, well, even Cary Grant at one point was an annoying kid, probably. Before there was I knew you when. Operation Paper Tube. Yeah, Bab 5. Yeah, Babylon 5 is a good one. Stay away from Warhammer. It's a rabbit hole. Babylon 5 had something going for it that a lot of shows don't have. I was watching the documentary on the making of it. Of course, it got in the early CGI. And they had some pretty cool ships. I really like the Star Furies. But even if they did use them as cannon fodder. But Babylon 5, from the day it was conceived, most television shows are supposed to have what they call a 5-season arc. They want 5 seasons so they get enough that they can sell it in syndication. Well, Babylon 5 was a syndicated show from the get, so it was designed with a 5-season arc. That meant it had a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that made it, even though they had standalone episodes, that made it a very coherent show. When you had shows like Supernatural, that was designed with a 5-season arc. When they hit the 5th season, they didn't expect the show to be so popular. People went for 15 seasons, so they just started making up 1-season arcs. And the show, although it was still fun, it lost a lot that it had some of what it had had in the first 5 seasons because it no longer had that rudder on it. Yeah, I was surprised how many of the cast had passed away from B5. We lost Garibaldi, we lost the Doctor, Mira Furlan just passed away not long ago, and I think so did not Londo, but his aide, the Veer. He'd had some health issues. He'd lost a bunch of weight, even on the show, and but it was gosh, more than half that cast has passed away. Farscape, I liked. It was different. Farscape was kind of in its own, well, pardon the pun, it was in its own universe, but I did enjoy it. Oh yeah, Sinclair passed away. He'd actually had to leave. She had like a nervous breakdown. He actually had a mental one with a mental disorder. Oh yeah, Jakar. Zach died. Wow. Okay. What was his name? Was it Dan? Or was it Conway? Jeff Conway. I didn't realize he passed. Well, Andrew Casalis, who played Jakar, who's probably my favorite character, not when the show started, but as it matured, he had he brought such gravitas to that. And he apparently, as one person that he said, he smoked with a passion that cannot be described with words, and I think it was lung cancer that killed him. That last movie they did, he recorded where he did the voiceover. He recorded it from his hospital bed, and Star Fury is actually a pretty popular kid. Andrew Katsalis, though, but his thing where he gives. There were so many scenes, monologues he has are fantastic. I think my favorite one is where he talks about the creatures that live near Sector 459 or whatever it was, and inhabit that area. And he does the thing with the ant on his fingertip. And if you haven't seen that, I recommend it. It just shows, even through all that makeup, he could still emote. And that voice helped, of course. But his character, in my opinion, just became had the most depth. Boxleitner, I liked him. He sort of always had that Boy Scout thing, but I think Garibaldi was more fun. Of course, he had a problem. He had, I think, was it Cherry Doyle? I think he had a drinking problem. A lot of that cast was really kind of star-crossed. They had health issues. It's just, they're just regular people in the real world that have the same problems we all do. And, I've never actually seen a Star Fury kit for sale, so I'm imagining if you can find one, you should grab it. Billy Money sent him to the cornfield. Yeah, God. Tell me that is not the most terrifying episode of Twilight Zone, The Monster, with Billy Money, little Billy Mummy playing. Send him to the cornfield, and turns the guy into the jet. Oh, God. Man, Serling had seen some dark stuff in his time in the service, and he brought it back, and he wrote about it, and he also smoked like a chimney. That's what killed him, and it was 51, I think, when he died. But, the Twilight Zone series would be an interesting one to make models of. Someone like Atlantis or somebody should see they get the rights of some of the characters there. Because even though there were often just one-episode characters, they're so memorable. And although they've done, I've heard people say that Dark Mirror is the modern Twilight Zone, and it really is a worthy follow-on. They've had some fantastic episodes. I've never seen what I'd call a bad one, but the attempts to reboot Twilight Zone, there's just, it's not that they're not good shows. It's just not the same. But I wonder if somebody could make kits. That would be interesting, figure kits, because there's so many memorable characters. Personally, the one I would get, my very favorite episode, not the scariest episode, but my favorite episode of Twilight Zone is one that only has 2 people in it, Jack Klugman and Jonathan Winters, and it's a game of pool. And I just think it's wonderfully acted, sharp, crisply written, and that was. But the Twilight Zone also had some. There were a few of them that had some vehicles and stuff, but I don't know. I just think that might be something that someone like Polar Lights or someone, or Mobius or somebody could make, because that kind of up there. Yeah, reboots just first off, you'd really have to do it in black and white, in my humble opinion. But the movie was pretty good. Unfortunately, it killed Vic Morrow, and I'm not sure why I like the episode of Game of Pool so much. Maybe it's just because of the two of them, the way they get on, and just it's the same reason I like Jakar, just the logic and the common sense and the way it's presented. Well written, well acted. Outer Limits had a lot of good ones too, and I think there are some Outer Limits characters that in fact, in the last viewers build, somebody sent me a picture of an Outer Limits character they built. I don't know, I assume it was from a kit, so there's something out there. Yeah, some of these specialty companies that do them. Yeah, the one with Agnes Moorehead, where she's, if you guys haven't seen the episode, that's Twilight Zone, I think. The one with Agnes Moorehead where she's alone on the farm and the quote-unquote little aliens. That's another fantastic episode. Burgess Meredith not only did Tom enough at last, but he also did one that I actually prefer to that, and that is The Obsolete Man, which very Harrison Bergeron. And oh yeah, Jakar was fantastic. I always tell people, if you were going to make a spin-off series from Babylon 5, Jakar would be the character to center it around. And I'll tell you something else. If you were going to do a spin-off from Deep Space Nine, I was just telling my wife this yesterday, Garrick. That is the spin-off series. And if you couldn't get Andy Robinson for it, maybe do Garrick in his younger years when he was still with the Obsidian Order. You could do all kinds of stuff with that. And the talking Tina figure from Tina. Oh God, that wouldn't be a creepy thing to have on your shelf as you're drifting off to slumber. There were Outer Limits kits, good. I wonder why you don't see any Twilight Zone kits. Andromeda's interesting. I like it. It's not one of my favorites, but I watch it. I do enjoy it. Nietzscheans had an interesting outlook. Oh no way. Yeah. Yeah, when the Star Trek series first started, I mean, I'm a TOS guy to the core, but I wasn't. DeCam just pointed at Mia Furlan died of West Nile virus. I mean, of all the unusual things. But anyway, in Star Trek, when Deep Space Nine came out, the first thing was a space station. You're not going around places. That's not going to be interesting, and I was wrong. And at first, I didn't warm to Voyager that much. To be honest, I found Janeway a little annoying. But as time went by, I started realizing these really were well-acted, strongly written shows. And of course, it takes a season for a show to find its footing. But Garrick, Garrick is definitely all of them. If I was going to make a series out of the Voyager characters, well, 7 of 9's got some stuff. That would have been an interesting one to follow, but there's no one there that you particularly like. There's one person off on their own I really want to follow. But Deep Space, because they just didn't. Maybe B'Elanna. But Garrick, yeah, that's just an interesting character. You could go so many different ways with that. And here's a little Garrick trivia for you. Past Time Tunnel, yeah. The Expanse. Yes, I have. I watched the first couple of seasons of it. I haven't caught up with the last of it, but it is a very, very heady, intellectual, very intelligent science fiction. Just reading some of the comments here. Yeah, I think we'd all follow 7 of 9 anywhere. Tom Paris Adventures. Yeah, but he ended up a raider. I don't know. He'd probably go get himself into trouble. He could be fun. The nice thing about Paris, he didn't always play by the rules. And my wife has a couple of dolls of 7 of 9 she's made that are still on the shelf with the Star Trek stuff. I think you guys have seen them in the background of some of the photos. But Real Tom Paris, executive producer. I didn't catch that. Oh, son of a gun. Get the novel A Stitch in Time, written by Andrew Robinson about Garrick's early. Oh, cool. That was going to tell you about Garrick. Andy Robinson, who plays Garrick, is he, as you guys probably know, he also played the Scorpio Killer in the original Dirty Harry movie, and he was a Broadway actor who was specifically picked for that role because of the angelic face. But one of the problems they had when they did Dirty Harry was that Andy Robinson is a genuine, honest to God, nice guy. In fact, he's a pacifist. He's never fired a gun or anything like that. So when they had to teach him to shoot for the Dirty Harry movie, he kept flinching. He did not handle a gun, and they had to take him out to a range and him do. And even in the movie, you still see he never quite got over the flinch. They had to do a lot of cuts when he would shoot and stuff. So it made it a little tricky to shoot that. But he was specifically cast for that role. And I'm thinking you have a guy who's a genuine pacifist, apparently one of the very nicest, most non-offensive people you could ever meet in the real world. Yet he's played two of Hollywood's best villains, Scorpio Killer, and Garrick's not so much a villain as he is an anti-hero, I guess. But I just find that interesting. And the thing is, he's got that look when he smiles. It's absolutely, with that friendly smile, it's absolutely terrifying. You just can't buy that. Yeah, the Eye of the Beholder, Yeah. I don't want to get off on the whole Picard thing. I know that's gotten to be a bit of a fan controversy. Which one lies? All of them. And I was thinking you could do it if you wanted to have Andy Robinson, is have him talking to the doctor later in life, and he's telling the doctor his backstory, and it would be episodic. And at the end of each episode, the doctor would go, Garrick, is any of what you just told me true? And then Garrick just smile. Now that makes sense. That's probably why they get the P-38. Yeah. So that when he would shoot the little P-38 with the blanks wouldn't flash as much as a revolver. That makes sense. You made me think of something that got away from me as quick as it could. I thought the Surf Man was going to be about playing tennis. Yeah, that one was. An episode is famous when The Simpsons parodied it. They did how to serve humans, how to cook humans, how to cook for humans, how to cook for 40 humans, how to cook 40 humans, how to cook for 40 humans. Don't blame me. I voted for Koloff. And there are fan favorites. Like, everybody's got their favorite Klingon. And you really almost can't count Worf because he's usually everybody's favorite. But, I mean, everybody's Klingon, like, Koloff, Kang, Galron, and it just goes on and on and on. Because these things, they create these rich universes. That's one reason we like to make models of them, is because, now you're kind of a little more in contact with it. And, yeah, that was Jaws, and they did make a character. I think they made a model of Jaws. They made the James Bond stuff, but I'm pretty sure they made a Jaws model. It's probably easier to come up with characters that haven't had models made of them than have. But I was never that big into figure models. I don't consider kaiju figures. I mean, they are, but they're human figures. I've got a Spock that I did was vinyl, and my wife had to paint the face. I screwed it up so bad. So the greenest people. It's a cookbook. I think Starlog just quit production. Oh, really? King 9. Yeah. There was. I think King 9 is where they got the idea for the television movie with Richard Basehart, Soul Survivor. And of course, that is, although it was a B-25 in the movie, it is apparently inspired by the B-24, the Lucky Lady, which is the unlucky, the most misnamed airplane in history, that they found out in the desert. Oh, God. That was horrible. Can't see Klingon with a straight face. Yeah, it's hard to keep a print production going. Well, guys, I have a family function in a while, so we're going on 5 o'clock local time. We've been officially on here for 2 hours, and we've actually been on the air for almost 3 because I wanted to get an early start, and my sound check turned into a whatever. It took on a life of its own, but once I got it working, I was afraid to turn it off. Well, I hope you guys had a good time chit-chat, and I will let you chat amongst yourselves for a while before I the Klingon tea ceremony. Ooh, ah. And I will toss something up here for your amusement while you chat amongst yourselves. And guys, it's my pleasure to host these things. It's a great time. I hope you guys have some fun, get to chat. Get to answer you guys. Really happy. I really hope Braun and Glita do get in the Hall of Fame. They certainly deserve it. And let me just find. Find something appropriate to put up while you guys get a chance to say goodbye to each other. I'll just toss up one of the somebody asked about Nito, so you know what, I'll just toss up the Nito video here if it'll work. Let me see that.
Nito and Nito Kagaku.
You guys have a wonderful
day. In 1961, Nito Kagaku started business, and in 1964 they started making plastic models with 6 kits, and by the end of the 1960s they had produced at least 49 kits in a wide variety of scales. And by the end of the 1960s, their catalog included 9 jets, 7 propeller aircraft, 4 utility aircraft, 3 armored personnel carriers, 3 motorcycles, 2 tanks, 3 aircraft carriers, 1 anti-motorcycle, and 1 real space module tank, 3 aircraft carrier space vehicle, 1 anti-motorcycle, and given that it was the late 1960s and including aircraft and space race, it was a reasonable choice. By the end of the 1970s, they had added 60 fiction characters and 38 aircraft. By the end of 11 infrastructure kits, 10 ships, 7 accessory sets, 6 guns, and even 2 trains. And they even made a series of what are listed as 1/3 scale electric fannies, possibly started as promotional items. These were sold
Okay, I do not know what just happened. I'll walk away for a few seconds and this screeching noise is coming out of it. Well, let's try something else. Okay, someone had mentioned Intex. No, I don't have that one. The story behind Glencoe Models is the story of a man's commitment to the hobby of plastic kit models at an affordable price. The story behind Glencoe Models is the story of a man's Glencoe Models is a kit the hobby of plastic kit models in Worcester County, Massachusetts, and is run by Nick Argento. Glencoe Models is a kit named in honor of Glencoe Valley in Scotland County, Massachusetts, and is run by Nick Argento. Nick is a lifelong model builder, named graduate of Glencoe Valley in Scotland County. Nick started the company in 1987. Nick is a lifelong making fairly inexpensive kits for younger and more casual models. Nick started the company in 1987. Nick is a lifelong making fairly inexpensive kits for younger at the time. $20 in 1987. Nick average customer making fairly inexpensive $10 kits at the time. $20 was very happy to stay within his budget. Making fairly inexpensive $10 kits at the time. Emphasize very happy to stay great quality. You can build one of their kits in just a night or two and it looks great. And as Nick says, in some ways, we are selling fantasy. One of their kits in just a night or two. The first kits were released in 1987 and were the U.S. Marines and The first kits were released in 1987 and were the U.S. Marines and Okay. Somehow I managed to get two audios going. I turned off the audio and it's still running. Something running down here at the bottom. 1, 2, 3. The story behind Glencoe Models is the story of a man's commitment to the hobby of plastic kit models at an affordable price for the casual builder. Glencoe Models is a kit model and plastics company in Worcester County, Massachusetts, and is run by Nick Argento. Named in honor of the Glencoe Valley in Scotland, where part of his family hails from, Nick is a lifelong model builder who is a graduate of Clark University. Nick started the company in 1987 with the goal of making fairly inexpensive kits for younger and more casual modelers. He wanted to appeal to the $10 modeler of the 80s and 90s. At the time, $20 was the usual budget for the average customer in a hobby store. A $10 kit along with a magazine and a few paints made the modeler very happy and stayed within that budget. One thing Glencoe did
was to emphasize multiple decal options and great quality. You can build one of their kits in just a night or two and it looks great. And as Nick says, in some ways, we are selling fantasy. The first kits were released in 1987 and were the U.S. Marines and Japanese infantry plus some miscellaneous Marks figures. In 1988, Glencoe released the X-Lindbergh Spirit of St. Louis, an XV-1 convertiplane, and an approximately 1/48 scale Grumman duck. The duck is actually a bit closer to 1/52nd scale, which is why the cover art says approximately 1/48 scale. This is done because distributors are very wary about buying anything off scale. Later that fall came several former ITC molds, the MB-2 Martin bomber in 1/74 scale, and 3 Russian armored vehicles, the Frog 3 missile carrier, the BTR-50 armored personnel carrier, and the PT-76 reconnaissance vehicle. All of these are in 1/32nd scale. This was followed by the United States Coast Guard rescue boat, the World War I subchaser, and the USS Oregon. The USS Oregon won Kit of the Year at the Nuremberg Toy Fair in the 1950s. Next were Hawk's old Viscount airliner and Jupiter C rocket, as well as the former ITC Explorer 1 satellite and the 1/330 scale U.S. Navy blimp. Then came the former Ideal Company's Curtiss Condor, Glencoe's original Albatross D3, the former Hawk Convair 880, and ITC's old 1/35 scale Brontosaurus skeleton, followed by the Tyrannosaurus skeleton, the Stegosaurus skeleton, and so on. The de Havilland Venom was an ex-Lincoln mold, as was the Bristol Sycamore helicopter. It was an eclectic mix, but Glencoe was off and running. The D3 Albatross was actually Glencoe's own original mold. However, getting this mold made proved a painful experience. The molds were initially miscut, and dealing with the vendor's problems followed by legal issues made the cost and difficulty of doing this an experience Glencoe did not wish to repeat, especially given their business model. As a result, the Albatross is the only Glencoe original mold. That said, once fixed, the Albatross joined the Glencoe catalog along with 6 other reproduction kits in 1989. This included the old ITC Walker Bulldog tank and their first reproduction of an old Hawk kit, the aforementioned Vickers Viscount turboprop airliner. I should note that the Viscount kit, which I had and loved, scales out beautifully with an HO scale model train layout. The model M41 Walker Bulldog tank is unusual for several reasons, not the least of which is its large 1/15 scale. This old ITC kit is the only one that I could find in this scale, and it goes well with 1/16 scaled radio-controlled armored kits. It is set up to be able to be motorized and has a working suspension. Although considered a fairly basic kit from a detail standpoint, it is a solid basis for a self-made radio-controlled tank, which can be detailed out to look quite good. Despite this, Nick points out that people were not happy with the M41 Bulldog tank. They were upset with the lack of quality and a lack of an interior. He states, "I'm not sure what they wanted from a $29.98 1/15 scale tank, but I think they wanted a $250 quality kit. It was advertised as being RC convertible, and hundreds of people were upset when they saw that it did not have an RC unit in it. This was before the explosion of cheap RC toys we enjoy today. $29.98 was pretty inexpensive for that kit, even at the time." Later in the 1990s, Glencoe made a 1/160 scale model of the U.S. Capitol building. It was sold for 4 presidential elections, and oddly, the election years were the worst-selling years for the White House and Capitol building. By the time Glencoe entered the market, kit models had lost much of their shelf space in general retail outlets and were pretty much restricted to big box stores like Walmart and Kmart, or hobby and craft stores like Michael's and Hobby Lobby, as well as dedicated hobby shops.
According to Nick, this was far more impactful than the competition from the exploding electronic game market. Despite this, the sales numbers were great until the mid-1990s. Besides hobby stores, each August Glencoe was shipping an assortment of kits to mid-size box stores such as Ames, Bradley's, Rich's, and so on. But these retail chains are all gone now, and so are the sales. Glencoe went from 20,745 stores on the mailing list in 1987 to less than 3,000 in 2020. The industry went from 117 distributors in the hobby world, of which Glencoe sold to 67, to just a handful today. Despite this, Glencoe has managed to carve out a niche and continues making the old kits today, but lest you think using existing molds made profitability a foregone conclusion, think again. Some owners of the molds had unreasonable ideas as to what the value of the molds was, and striking a deal for a 30-year-old mold could occasionally be impossible. Then there was the condition of the molds plus the popularity of them. Once you have a mold in production, you have to sell it, and not every mold is a hit. Glencoe never tried to attract the rivet-counting perfectionist, but instead concentrated on the casual model builder. Their kits go together well and are good representations of the subject matter, without having a huge number of tiny detail parts that no one's going to see. This is common with molds from the 50s and 60s, and even many from the 70s. Many of their kits are nostalgia builds for a gentrifying population of model builders who made these kits when they were first run by their original manufacturers, companies such as Ring Toy Corporation, ITC, Hawk, Lindbergh, and Miniature Masterpieces and Adams, just to name a few. In the past, their catalog has sported cars, tanks, planes, ships, and predicted spacecraft. Many of their space vehicles are von Braun designs that were made popular by the Walt Disney series Man in Space. Today, Glencoe has a small but varied selection of kits ranging from aircraft and X-planes to real space to sci-fi, as well as dinosaur skeletons, watercraft, wagons, chariots, and figures. But working with the older molds comes with its own specific problems. Nick states, "The subjects are often more exciting and unique. In the older times, they picked subjects beyond F-16s and Spitfires. I mean, how many new molds of Tiger tanks and P-51s can the market sustain? Of course, that's mainly because the market is so small now in the US, and I doubt anyone would take a chance. In Russia and Ukraine, where modeling seems to be exploding, unique subjects are being made. The Eastern Bloc seems to be where it is today. The other reason is that tool and die making was an art then and not a CAD program. There's a style to each mold. I can sometimes open a tool, clean the preservative grease off of it, and see that this tool was made by the same guy who made tool X that's on the rack. Some of the new tooling is incredible, but from my perspective as the person who discovers, fixes, and runs the tool, having that character is more interesting." However, Nick also states this comes with some notable drawbacks. Some of the older tooling is worn out. Parts stick, embossing marks, etc. Some of the older tooling, as an operating tool, is horrible. The old Strombecker molds are the molds from hell. I cannot put an operator on them, I have to run them myself. Popular kits, but a real pain to run. Some of them I do upgrade. The Aurora World War I models had their embossed markings removed. Some of them had new engines, propellers, and guns, etc. It takes Nick about 4 hours to set up one of these older molds, and operating the machine requires an experienced and delicate touch to get proper injection, reduce flash, and manage cooling to prevent shrinkage. It's as much an art as a science. He likes to issue kits with multiple choices and, whenever possible, multiple nationalities. The company is currently in the process of moving its operation to a better location, but is remaining in Worcester County. And despite the current world situation, is managing to keep things going. Well, that's about all I have for Glencoe, and I want to give a special thanks to Nick Argento for taking time out of his busy day to help me with this video. So what's your Glencoe Models experience? I'm Max of Max's Models. We'll see you next time.
Far beyond this world I've known, far beyond my time, What kind of world am I going to find? Will it be real or just all in my mind? What am I? Who am I? What will I be? Where am I going? And what will I see?